Don't want to
inflammatory
upset people.
backgrounds. Today on WhickTV. Welcome, 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 gang, to another episode of WhickTV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to discuss issues of the day, both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And today we are talking all about policing, police abolition, whether or not reform is the way to go. Do we even need a modern police force in America? Do they do more harm than good? We're going to talk about all this and more, right? So welcome and thank you. We have a couple guests that are a little late. They'll be hopefully showing up soon, but the show must go on. So thank you all for being here, and thank you all for coming through. When Paradigm decides he's ready, he'll join us, I'm sure. But he's here, I'm assuming, right? And isn't dead or anything. But anyway, how are both of you today?
Excellent. Life's good. I just had my second child, so single-handedly. Thank you. I'm helping save the white race by bringing in light-eyed, white-skinned, brown-haired children into the world. We don't know if they're cis, but they're definitely male. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Excellent. I am glad you prioritize coming on my panel over taking care of your family. That is a proper prioritization.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Viv, how's it going with you? How's life on
I've
your
got a
end?
bit of a headache, but I've also got some Szechuan noodles here, so things could be worse.
Things can always be worse. Let me DM Paradigm and see what's up here. Okay,
I meant
hopefully.
to get Singapore noodles, but I got Szechuan noodles. I don't know, I must have just clicked the one above it by accident. But you know what? These are okay, actually. These are quite nice. It makes for an interesting change.
A happy accident, if you will, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? The show must go on. It might turn into a one-on-one debate.
It's okay, honestly. So I can't think of more people that I would be more politically polarized with than 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖜. But I think we bond over the fact that we both use the term "fuck" a lot, and we're both not. And I don't think we're really strong bullshitters. So hiding our power level or whatever. So I'm sure we could carry the conversation until other people start popping in.
Okay, well then
I don't think anybody could accuse me of hiding my power level.
True.
I think
Vivian
what kind of power level would I
thinks.
be hiding? If I was hiding it, it would be bad, right?
Deception is not in her vernacular. She is upfront and has always been very forward about what she thinks and what she wants to happen. But let's start with counterpoints today. Policing. What are your thoughts? Let's give us some thoughts here.
Yeah, so my thing is one of my first debates when I came into the Twitch and YouTube political space is that the defund the police and Black Lives Matter movement was going to be counterproductive, not because police reform isn't a positive goal, but because if you defund without having your parallel structures in place, you're going to cause a whole bunch of community harm, and then that community harm is going to be used as propaganda by the right wing in order to just triple down on policing. I feel like that prediction, which I made in 2019 or some shit, has basically been the way the political landscape has unfolded. I'd love to go back and say that I told you so, but I would also like to fix the issues that we do have in policing rather than saying that I told you so. When it comes to policing, I think that the challenges and the fact that they have to be jacks of all trades, masters of none. So when you have people who are dealing with psych issues and shootings and stabbings and robberies and burglaries and shoplifting and mental health calls and all that kind of stuff, the truth is that you're never going to have somebody that's good at all of those things, and they do fuck up a healthy chunk. So I'm actually okay with defunding within I'll wrap it up, but I'm okay with defunding within the concepts of bringing up parallel institutions like field social workers. I think that would be a cool development. And then maybe building that into not the existing police department budget, because that's going to be a no-go with the policing unions, but cut that out of projected future law enforcement growth. And then, of course, if you can statistically back up the parallel structures, I have no problems with those programs expanding. And I'll leave it there for now.
Well, thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. Vivian, abolition, police abolition. What is that?
Excuse me. The abolitionist movement is one that encompasses a broad range of societal problems and ills that seeks to reform the prison and policing system, ultimately abolish it, and in its place build up those things that Connor was talking about. Better mental health care, better social care, better education, better housing, right? What is it, like 3/4 of the American prison population is illiterate, right? Like, the numbers of people that need to be incarcerated could be drastically reduced if funds were put in the right place, right? And I don't think anybody can really necessarily disagree with that. Maybe Connor can, I don't know. He gave a kind of funny look, but the root causes of crime, right? Poverty, poor education, etc., etc., etc. All right, we can see this just from looking at the demographics of the US prison population. So the abolitionist project is one to build up those social structures, one that envisions a new world where prisons and police become much, much less necessary, to the point that whatever institutions are in the place of having to incarcerate somebody, for example, who is just unavoidably, ridiculously violent, right, look nothing like the police forces of today, and thus that police force is abolished. But it's a long-term project, and it's one that encompasses, like I said, a broad array of social...
Yeah, I get you. Well, I guess my first question then would be like, given that it is a long-term project by your estimation, what are some advocacies that you would do like for right now? Well, first of all, welcome Prior Paradigm. Hi. Can you hear us now? Yo,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I've been here this whole time. I'm sorry I had to get a haircut.
Like right now, like just.
I have a personal barber that comes to this house and gives me a haircut. Yeah.
Well, it's looking sharp, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate
Welcome
that.
Here. We were just giving our thoughts on police abolition. So since you're here, Vivian and Counterpoints gave their thoughts. What are yours, sir?
Get them the fuck out. Replace with an entirely new community and system. It's going to suck that there's going to be growing pains in the country because there's growing pains with everything. Not everything can be done within a week or two. Doesn't fucking matter. Police as an entire institution have absolutely blown the lid on corruption, gangs. They're effectively a state arm of force that cannot be controlled. There are no laws. There are no limits. There are no people. There are no things that will ever stop them from having complete and utter control. And I will repeat this point the same way I repeat every other point. If we talk about firefighters, nobody's out there watching firefighters letting fires burn, unless it's a controlled burn in California. If we want to talk about EMS workers, there are not EMS workers, unless there are a few, who let people die. They usually just transport them best as they can to the hospital. It feels like police are the only times where if they ever stop you or you get into an altercation with them, you are absolutely powerless by factors of the law, by factors of society, by factors of social stigma. You cannot aggress towards cops. You cannot have an issue with whatever a cop tells you to do. While we say that you know your rights, it's pretty much up to them whether or not you live or die. And if there are a group of people who are hired by the state and or city to carry out these actions, and there are no statutes of limitations on how far they can go, then they are an arm of the state that must be eliminated. Abolish all police. ACAB.
Jesus.
Pretty strong.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, we went from like, oh man, we're gonna be so productive. I'm gonna walk through how to do police reform from a conservative lens to Jesus Christ, we're gonna have to relitigate fucking everything.
Oh yeah.
Can I focus on the productive part first, and then we can get into ripping each other's throats out?
Whatever you want to do, go for it.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, I almost disagree with like 99% of what the fuck you just said. So we'll get into that in a minute. So if we were going to actually say that what we want to do is create parallel structures to the point that we render law enforcement no longer necessary, or like a minimalist arm of the state where you only have to use them in very extreme circumstances.
Well, I'm an anarchist. I want there to be no state, but like fundamentally, you still have to have some way of keeping somebody who is like unavoidably, uncontrollably dangerous away from the rest of the population. I don't think that should look anything like the prison we have today or the police force that we have today.
Sure,
but like, I'm not proposing we just let somebody who's clearly like fucking serial killers just walk around, right?
Okay, but let me try to steelman anarchism as hard as I possibly can, because I'm not an anarchist. I think there's always going to be some level of power, organization, governmental bodies, et cetera. But even within like anarchist philosophy, I think most people who are incrementalist, what they say is like, we have to create parallel structures. So we have, families that are teaching people. We create alternatives to the public education system. We create alternatives to police by basically working within our communities on a volunteer basis in order to reduce violence, et cetera. And then ultimately what happens is like, you're not grabbing an AK-47 and then Molotov cocktailing the local police department. It's just that people are calling the police department less because independent citizens without the state are solving the problems before the state uses those problems as a justification for their power.
The problem comes when the police force come into your neighborhood and fucking murder somebody that is in your community, right? That's when the Molotovs start fucking flying. That's when the Minneapolis precinct burned down, right?
Sure. Sure. So let's So, but let's talk about like incrementalism from this perspective, because I actually think that there is a conservative argument for creating. So you would want to create the parallel structures in order to eventually eliminate the state, because you would basically want to minimize the amount of violence that are taken out on individual people who are a part of a state, even if you don't like the state ultimately.
These things are simultaneous, right? Like, you have to advocate for the demilitarization of the police. You have to advocate for the restriction of the police's abilities, right? What they're freely allowed to do. You have to advocate for greater oversight of them. You have to advocate to reduce their power at the same time as you're increasing your power.
You don't have to worry about momentum, because I already have things to pick apart here. Here's my thing though. I don't think that you're going to succeed in a political environment unless you're saying we are creating the parallel things first so they can take the weight off of the institution. Because basically what's going to happen is if you can have all the fucking parallel agendas that you want as a political activist.
What weight? That's okay. So what weight is one of the questions, because
I can give you a specific example, but sorry, go ahead.
No, I know what you mean, right? Like there are obviously things that there are no structures in place to deal with, right? I have this thing with fucking other anti-fascists where like there are some real dipshit kiddie fucking anarchists who are like, you should never contact the FBI ever, right? And I'm like, if I'm in a Nazi Discord and I uncover a fucking terrorism plot, I'm contacting the FBI. Who the fuck am I going to call? The John Brown Gun Club?
I'm curious.
Right? Like, they're not going to be able to disarm the fucking bomb.
I'm curious because stop just real quick. I'm curious because I want to get Paradigm in on this too. I don't want it to be just a one-on-one right here. Like, so
I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm listening. Counterpoints is usually rational. So if he says he has an argument, then like I would like to hear him out. I was going the back and forth
for you specifically regarding this, right? Like, so do you think under what circumstances, right, given you have your thoughts towards the police, would you call the police, right? Would you pick up the phone, dial 911 and say, police, something's going on, I need help, or you need to come now, right? So Viv gave an example, right, of if she uncovers a terrorist plot, she's calling the FBI. What about you?
In any given situation that goes down in a certain way, generally I don't move in those circles where that's necessary, and the way my community is set up, or at least the way people like me in my neighborhood, I generally don't have to deal with problems that can't be solved by like other means, if we understand what I'm talking about. So
I don't.
it would
Can you be more clear? Just for
can't
my
be.
audience's sake.
I like how everybody but you it's like, just if shit go down in the hood, I got people who would look out for me. I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Okay.
So it would require, so for me to ever call the police, it would require something that I wouldn't want my hands dirtied in, if that makes sense.
You've got some
But
of those.
this
You've got
is-
some of those structures already, is what you're
Right.
saying.
Yeah. Exactly.
But hold on. So we're going to view the institution of law enforcement, and we're going to view your parallel structures probably a whole lot differently. The way that I've interacted with, let's be generous. Let's call these parallel social structures. Some people might call them, gangs, or basically loose affiliations of people who are competent and comfortable with violence.
I mean, the police are a gang, dude.
What's that?
The police are a fucking gang, dude.
Okay, if we want to get into but this is where we literally get into like a fundamental conversation about like the Leviathan. So it's I forget the paradigm between like the two books from like fucking 500 years ago. But
I know you're gonna use inflammatory language. I'll throw it straight back at you. Right.
Okay, well, I'm not. I'm running on 5 hours of sleep, so you're gonna have to forgive me a little bit. But basically, like I believe in this concept of power, where power abhors a vacuum, and as a result, it's better to have a relatively benevolent, relatively benign, relatively neutral Leviathan, basically a huge power that can fuck you over if you get out of line.
That ain't the police, right? If I'm okay. So the one of the things that I wanted to mention, right? If I'm a parent of a trans kid in Florida right now, right? Mm-hmm. I ain't talking to the police for shit. I'm trying to get out the fucking state, but I'm not talking to the police for shit, because as soon as they know that I have a kid who is trans, right? Even if that kid's fucking like 16, 17 years old, they can take that kid away from me.
Can we talk about the blacks before we get into the transes?
I don't think it doesn't matter about it being the transes, okay?
I want to know. I
don't know, because you're right that the institution is not benevolent or benign for certain communities. I can concede that already.
Yeah, a significant amount of communities and protesters and a whole bunch of other people.
What?
Who
could they be?
Okay, I have a question for both Viv. I have a question for Viv and Paradigm, if you will. So, what makes your parallel social structure, as counterpoints called them,
very charitably,
better than the police? Like, why is
I can answer that. I can answer that.
Prefer, please.
I can answer that. I'm going to do this in one sentence. I think it would be a lot less. I think it would be a lot easier to just say, if ICE was ran by like the people that they're deporting, the style or methods in which they would use to deport people would be a lot more humane. Does that make sense? People who look like you know how to deal with situations that you've been in. People who grew up in your neighborhoods know how to deal with the situations you've been in. With police structures, they hire completely out, like all the way out. And basically the police presents a presence of fear. There's no reason for them to be there other than to what?
Is that rhetorical or not rhetorical?
That's up to you.
Okay, I think they're there to deter property crime and also intervene in violent crime, but we obviously don't agree there.
I didn't say that. I agree with you.
Okay. That's what they should be there for, and that should be their primary role served, and that's what I would like to think the ideals of it are. I have, if you want to keep going, but I do have two counterexamples that I want to share.
Okay, so I will keep going, but only in this sentence. Just remember that the counterexamples that you bring about won't change the stature of what Vivian just said about certain communities. Sure. If you have different communities in a neighborhood that can't respond to the same arm the same way, then the problem has to be with the arm. It can't be with the communities, because we either remove the communities or the arm. And I think that everyone here would want to argue, I think it's better to remove the arm. That, you're cutting the boy's hand off for sticking his finger in the fan.
Okay, so I'm okay with your analogy so far. I'm tracking them. Let me give you my counterexamples. And I'm going to bust out a notepad because I can understand this conversation is going to get complex. So, number one, my experience with parallel organizations, which I would say is basically mutually assured destruction within like violent organizations, has not been good. So what would happen in my community and in a community that was near me? There's a community that's near me called 𝕵𝖎𝖙. And basically the way that it works is that they have mutually assured destruction when it comes to violence. If there's competing drug organizations that are within close proximity to each other, one of the members from that organization gets killed. Basically, either the person who committed that murder or a family member of that person who committed that murder would be dead within a week. Literally, there was a saying that like homicides in 𝕵𝖎𝖙 comes in twos, because literally one person's dead, somebody else is dead soon, and we would have those flare-ups. So I don't exactly think that is a great way. That's like fucking some real medieval justice frontier bullshit. So I don't view that as better.
I will absolutely concede and agree with you on that point. I have the stance that as much as I want police to be abolished, I don't think certain communities, especially underfunded ones, have the ability to rally the support and like systems as fast as possible to run a parallel system. But like, I don't have a choice in the matter because I cannot literally trust people who like, I'll tell you, if we're going with counterexamples, the very first video I ever made, I was looking for film property and a cop that was retired happened to live next door. And his wife came out and literally screamed at me, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're trespassing. You're one of those thugs that comes here and spray paints all the time. I'm going to get my husband and he's a cop and he's got a gun." So he came down with the gun, pointed it at me and told me to go away. So I went away. Had to have been 4 minutes later, DT swarmed me. I spent 2 days in jail, and I was released and the charge was nothing. "Oh, we made a mistake. You could just go home." It's like, even in the realm of them doing their job properly, it's going to fuck with people.
No repercussions, no fucking compensation, nothing for those kinds of wrongful arrests. They just pick you up, put you in a fucking van, you spend fucking 2 days in the police station, your life is... that's 2 days out of your fucking life.
What would the, just out of curiosity, Viv, under these parallel structures that you envision, what would be the...
I fucking hate how much we're, like, focusing in on this idea of, like, parallel structures as in, like, a force that is like the police that does police
Okay, well, maybe
things,
this is my misunderstanding then. So can you please correct me here?
So what I said at the very start, right, is that like funding, community activism, fucking institutional power, all needs to be put into the places where it's going to help to reduce crime in and of itself. Right? Education was one of the huge examples that I brought up because 75% of the American prison population is illiterate, right? Housing, food security, all of this sort of shit, right? We know poverty breeds crime, right? We know that like crime does better in impoverished areas. So if we address the root causes of crime, then we have less of a need for the police, right? So whatever quote unquote parallel structure, as Counterpoints wants to call it, when I talk about parallels, I'm talking about parallel power structures, so it's entirely different. But like whatever parallel structure you're talking about doesn't even have to do the work that the police currently are supposed to do, and certainly doesn't do the work that the police do. Right.
Okay. So I want to address this from a conservative lens, because basically what we're talking about oftentimes in these conversations, and excuse me if I monopolize the next minute or so, but oftentimes where we hit a crossroads is we have this thing where you're like, well, we need to demilitarize the police, so we need to take away their trucks, and we need to take away their body armor, we need to take away their AR-15 rifles, and we need to slash their budget by 10% or 20%. All of these are non-starters with existing municipal governments. It's just not going to happen. And then if you do succeed in doing these things, or even if there's the perception that you succeed in these things, when homicide takes a tick or property crime takes a tick up or whatever, they're going to argue back in order to reinstitute the police, basically.
So what you're talking about?
Hold on, Mix. That was not even the point. That was the setup.
All right.
So
okay.
I want to finish the point. So what I think you would need to do, which I know an anarchist is not going to like, but I think a statist would like, is you're going to have to cut these things that are going to reduce crime that is not law enforcement themselves out of projected future budgets. So if you wanted field social workers, or if you wanted pre-K programs, or if you wanted universal high quality education, or if you wanted universal healthcare, then you're going to have to get those things almost separate from having a conversation about law enforcement, where it's going to be like federal subsidization, particularly in the United States, for some of the programs that we've just talked about. And then when it comes to like field work, like unarmed field social workers and all that kind of shit, you're going to have to cut it out of future budgets, not existing budgets, because cops are going to fucking piss and moan if you're taking 2 patrol officers off the road or 2 detectives against their thing. But if you say, hey, we were planning on giving you 3 officers in the year 2027, instead you're going to get 2 officers, and then we're going to give you a field social worker, no, like the political upheaval is going to be infinitely less.
You're just talking about the practicalities of like how to actually even achieve this kind of downsizing of the police in favor of other services, right? Which is totally fine. I mean, but it's not an argument against the position that this is something that should be occurring, right? You're just saying it's impractical to abolish the police tomorrow, and I'm kind of vaguely there with you to a certain degree. I think for the vast majority of people, they probably aren't going to benefit from having interactions with the police. But in those instances of serious violent crime, and where and terrorism, and what was the other fucking thing you said? Property crime?
Deterring property crimes.
I don't think they do deter property crime in any real sense, but sure. There might be situations in which the police are like needed for a small minority of people currently, but the vast majority of people are not going to benefit from interactions with the police. It's just at worst a time sink, at best a time sink, and at worst they can end up losing their fucking lives.
Okay, but here's where I want to kind of dispel like just some lefty or progressive or anarchist conceptions. Like, there is data from the, I believe it's like the community orienting policing whatever grant from the federal government. There's like another data set that says the same thing, that basically like a police officer within a municipality like correlates with a 1 to like 1.3% drop in crime across the fucking board. So to say that they don't do anything is not correct, and to say that they don't deter crime is not correct. Hold on, I promise I'll listen to you.
I'm just raising my hand. Sorry.
But that's not to say. So, for instance, if there's a 1.3% drop in crime with each police officer that you add, if you add like a high quality preschool teacher and you get like a 1.5% or a 1.8% fucking drop in crime, then obviously it's more effective to invest in education rather than like policing. So you should still have both, because the truth is that there's going to be roles that need to be fulfilled by both, but you should also focus on the most effective ways of reducing crime within the community, which is not opposed to law enforcement. It's something that pushes in the same direction.
Okay, Paradigm, you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Wick. How many people would it take to get on this panel for you to hear a racial slur? What's the percentage? What's the chance?
Like a racial, what kind of racial slur are we talking?
Anyone, or it could be like a comedy joke thing, Karen or whatever.
Like towards what group? Like if
not towards a group. Nice try. No, I just mean in general. Oh. Nice try.
How much money would I have to get?
No,
because it's not.
No. I'm saying to you. I'm saying to you, how many people do you think would have to be in here to interject in this conversation for somebody to get super mad and like say a slur? What's the percentage? 8? Okay. So I say this to say
I don't know. Okay, I'm really struggling with the question here, because if anyone says a slur, a racial slur, dropping the N-word or something, I kick them off. I don't know.
Right? No, that's we're not saying how much would you allow it. I'm just saying the odds, because I'm trying to relate it to
odds.
You. Yeah, you can't control. Like, so you say there's like data that shows there's a drop in crime. If 4 of us were in the same room, us 4 here in the same room, and 3 of us had guns, I don't think the 4th person would be would be willing to like pull some shit. You know what I mean? And if that's the case, then are the cops really the reason why crime is deterred? Or is it just because there's somebody there who could shoot me, there's somebody there who could arrest me, I'm not going to steal this old lady's purse?
I understand your analogy just real quick, but I'm just letting you know, it's not the number of people, it's who's there. I was
being facetious. I was being facetious.
I had to cancel a VOD because I had a panel on trans issues, and they kept dropping the F slur. They just couldn't stop the F slur, and I was like, well.
Oh no! I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. That he said it, and I gotta pick on it. So you had a bunch of people talking about a marginalized community, and it got heated.
They were all the part of the community.
I think
I'm being facetious as well, but I couldn't.
Right, no, I understand from like your brand. Sorry to even begin to associate you in that way. I was trying to make a one-to-one, like we can see this in real time comparison. Thank you. But you did mention. I'm sorry.
Wick has the fucking power in this situation, right?
If I call myself a
T-slur, as acceptable as it is for me to call myself a T-slur or an F-slur, if I do that, then Wick's gonna get fucking upset, and I'm up here on his panel.
Come on. All right, hold on. I actually have a point though against what you said. So this is genuinely what I believe though. What you said, where it's like, is it the presence of law enforcement and them serving their high-minded idealism where they have a shiny badge and a uniform and American democracy and all this kind of bullshit? Is that what's preventing crime? Or is it just a dude with a gun who could beat your fucking ass if you step wrong?
I don't know why you're arguing over a fucking 1% decrease anyway. Like 1% is fucking nothing compared to the crime that's like committed.
If
having a police presence provides a 1% drop in crime, I'd say they're not worth the fucking money you're spending on them.
Okay, Vivian Wolf, this doesn't make any fucking sense because if you add 10 cops and you drop crime by 10% that's a significant fucking deal.
Okay, this is an analogy.
Now this isn't even an analogy. This is just like
you're saying crime drops 1% for every cop in the area.
I can look it up real quick if you want me to. Yeah.
I thought you would have been prepared with that.
So if you have 100, so you only need 100 cops in New York then.
No, of course it correlates with it correlates with the population. So, like, it's always going to be population oriented, community oriented policing.
It all seems like we're just going down weird fucking
right. So the rabbit hole here. I'm going to try to pick us out of it because that's what I do best. If police are a deterrent to crime, what types of crime? Because most of the crimes that occur that police pick up on are things that I could probably solve with, extra food stamps, housing, things like that, universal basic income, just, some things that deter people other than cops from needing to do crime to make money to live. Because that's the general reason why people do crime.
But you still have to live with a whole bunch of conservatives, by the way. And people are not. I have a whole bunch of really racially charged words to say in reference to that.
Please don't drop slurs on my channel, but go ahead.
It's not slurs. It's not slurs. It's like a meme word. But basically, what you're kind of saying are the way Gibbs, G-I-B-S, Gibbs. So what you're basically saying is pay people not to commit crime. That's kind of what you just told me. That's how a conservative is going to read that. Now, I could steel man that and say,
how a conservative is going to read it. Conservatives are dumb as fuck and wrong on a whole bunch of issues. Like, I'm arguing for what's right and what's true, not like for what conservatives are going to think is right or true. If I did that, I wouldn't be able to argue for any.
Can I ask? Okay, I have a question. For the panel. Because you both have mentioned this. By both, I mean Paradigm and Viv have mentioned this several times. That if we get at the root cause of property crime, to be clear, which is poverty, right? That we can reduce crime significantly. Two questions. One, do you think that eliminates crime? And if not, how much does it? Are we talking a 50% reduction? Are we talking about 80% reduction? Can you ballpark it for me? Right?
I got an answer for you. I got actual stats and figures for you.
Please.
Oh,
When
nice.
the police took a break in 2010 and 2013, crime dropped by 12%. When the police were angry at us and they were, oh, you're defunding us and you don't treat us nicely with respect, they all said, we're not going to walk our beats.
Did reported crime drop?
Crime drop.
Okay. I'm
No.
Crime dropped.
How do we
By
even,
police
how do we
standards.
even, I'm
And I was
curious
there.
how you actually. I'm curious
You
how
need
you
to work.
actually quantify that in the absence of police and people.
Hold on.
So-
Connor's
I'm
having.
fixing my
Connor's
shit,
having.
and then this is
okay.
also. This is
So,
also
Vivian,
hold on. No,
Wait,
sorry.
no,
real
come
quick.
on. You can't say wild shit and then just
real
fucking
quick,
not have it
let
contested.
Connor. If
What?
Connor.
I mean, to be fair,
could
like
Google it.
I only asked the question that you would probably ask. I'm asking him like
Okay,
how
I'll
that
wait.
data is collected. That's all.
right, and it's the lesser interactions. It's the lesser interactions. Most of the crime that happens in New York City is not
How was
violent.
the data collected? Is a question they're asking you. Like how did
By
they
police.
collect and collate this data?
That I'm gonna have to Google. Sorry, I only had that one fact on the top of my head.
Oh,
that I'll
okay.
have to Google, but it's
Okay.
there. It's there.
Okay, hold on.
2010 and 2013. You can.
But y'all
Okay,
have
Google, pull it up,
to.
man.
Okay,
I'd like to
you
see it as
have
well.
to-
Anyway,
Okay. I
didn't
just
hear
want to
what?
point this out real quick. It's a very quick point. Okay. Law enforcement slowdowns are not the same as basically like we're never responding to anything ever. Of course, law enforcement officers don't let robberies and fucking murders and rapes go without a strong response time during those fucking things. What they do.
Hey,
Not
you
sure about
guys
that.
gotta let him finish. You guys gotta let him finish. I gotta give him space because apparently the other
there's
people on his side cucked me and they decided not to show up, which I'm kind of pissed at. But
Okay, hold on. No, because y'all just
He's
went
scared of the cat.
when I said what I said. So I just want to ask you straight up. So you think that American law enforcement officers, when they're sitting in their patrol cars, or if they're sitting on a fucking street corner and they hear that somebody is being fucking murdered or raped or robbed a fucking block away from them, they say to themselves, "Well, fuck them. It's slowdown time. I'm just going to let a member of the community get raped, robbed, and murdered." That's what you're saying to me right now with your response.
I mean, there have been incidents where it's happened.
That was
I mean, we can
that's
talk about-
happened.
we can talk about
Okay,
Chaz
then-
and their refusal to like
Okay, then
their
at this
refusal
point,
to
you're
like provide medical
you-
assistance for a man dying in the fucking street. Yeah,
No. Don't fucking twist it to something different.
I'm not
That is
twisting it,
different.
motherfucker. I'm talking about
Yes,
how
you are.
police
You absolutely
police
are.
sat outside of the Chaz and blocked ambulances from coming in rather than attending the scene of the crime.
Why? I'm just going to follow you down your rabbit hole. Why do you think they did that?
Why do I think they did that? Because
Yeah,
they were mad
me
at the
through it.
people who were protesting and saying that they didn't want any police. That's why.
And why do you think EMS or fire department are not allowed in unless police are allowed in first?
The police were allowed in, dude.
What are you talking about?
The dude was brought to the edge of the fucking to the edge of the zone. The police fucking blocked the ambulances from getting to him.
Okay. Listen.
I don't know what do you. That's one example. I'm sure fucking Paradigm might have others.
I got
That's
plenty
what
of
I
this.
recall.
Like
Okay.
I've lived through this,
No,
so it's
no.
like.
Okay, no. See, this is where you're like ascribing the people that you're talking about are no longer human in your worldview. They don't have empathy. They don't have sympathy. They're not trying to do their jobs. They're not trying to uphold ideals. They're not trying to serve a broader level of the community. They're just inhuman fucking monsters that want to fucking pay.
A lot of them do seem to be that way. Yeah.
Okay, I would basically say
Power
that
corrupts.
y'all have had negative experiences with law enforcement officers, which absolutely fucking happens. And y'all are part of brutalized fucking communities who have a fucking narrative about what law enforcement is and does. But that doesn't mean that your narrative is accurate to.
Oh,
even
I'm
a
sure
majority of
they
law
do.
enforcement
I'm sure they do great things for Becky and Tom when they see a black guy on their lawn.
Yeah, can
But,
we at
like,
least admit that they're doing
fucking-
great things for white people? Can we at least admit that?
Sorry, what do you
Can we
think
at
Becky
least-
and Tom?
It's what
yeah,
the
can
route
we
you want to
just-
go, Connor? Like,
Can we just admit that they're doing great things for white people? Can we just admit that?
For
No.
some white people, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yo, that's
For
the other
Becky
part
and
too.
For
for
middle
Becky and
class
Tom
and
living
upper
in
middle class
fucking-
white people.
living in
Oh.
fucking suburbia. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. I'm sure they do some real nice things for them. They keep
Okay.
those spooky minorities away.
Okay. All right. So we understand that law enforcement can serve a deterrence process. They can serve medical processes. They can assist with first response. They're just not responding appropriately to the communities that y'all are a part of, and you resent them for it.
Not, I mean, what I was talking about, getting some black guy off your fucking lawn, is not responding appropriately to a fucking situation. It's simply, hey man, Becky's in tears, fucking arrest and beat up this black dude now. You know, like, yes, police can do good things for people. If that's what you're trying to get me to admit. Some police have done and can do good things for people.
Okay, but this is where this is completely disconnected from reality. Okay, there are different. I'll just share this with you. Please indulge me for the next 2 minutes of your time. Okay, there are several ways to patrol a community, and I agree with you that some of these are super negative, super toxic, and horrible for the community. Okay. So I'll give you what I think is the bad example, and then I'll give you the good example. Mix. This is gonna be a multi-part story, so please don't interrupt me in the first section.
I'm not fucking interrupting. I'm getting comfortable in my chair so that I can relax.
It's just happened a couple of times. It's just happened a couple of times. All right. So the first example, I don't like to fuck with black people to ruin their days. It does not make me happy. It doesn't give me an erection. I get no emotional satisfaction out of it. My wife doesn't applaud me when I get home for fucking with black people.
Is that why you quit being a cop?
Yeah, probably. So
I'm sorry, man. You are asking for it. Carry on.
Just let him go. Let him go. Look. Just real quick. I will interrupt you real quick to say I know a lot of you are yelling that this is a 2v1. This is a 2v1. This is a 2v1.
I love
motherfucker. I've sat here through 3v1s, 4v1s, 5v1s.
Counterpoints is perfectly capable. He's a grown adult man, and he can handle his shit. If he has trouble, I can bring in someone else. But for now, I'm being
very charitable and chill.
And I am white and straight, so I should be able to handle one black man and one sexual minority. We will be okay. So, anyways,
okay, my monetization is Zoom. Okay, go ahead. Go for it.
So. All right. So the way that I patrolled, the way that I like patrolling, the way that I think is the correct way to patrol is that there was a rougher area of town. There's no other way to say it. It's just rougher area of town, disproportionately black, disproportionately poor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I did from, I would say, 9 p.m. till 3 a.m., if I did not have a call, I would drive on the same 5 or 6 streets over and over and over and over again. And when I'm saying over and over, I'm literally talking about hours hitting the same 5 blocks over and over again. And these were the blocks where people were getting burglarized and people were getting murdered. And the reason why I hit that, and the reason why I hit it as hard as I did, is because I knew that as long as I was in the community, the chances of a homicide happening were significantly reduced. And also, if there was a homicide or a murder or a stabbing or a burglary that did occur, I would have a less than 1 minute response time. And on top of that, the people who were likely to commit the crimes, they saw me, so they knew that I would have a 1 minute response time to whatever shady shit was going on. As a result, typically, when I was able to do that and I did not have other calls that pulled me out of my zone, I did not have homicides and I did not have burglaries, and the day shift fucking loved me because I was basically doing my job and people didn't get burglarized overnight, okay? That is law enforcement. That is serving as a deterrent. That is bad guys saying, there's the guy with a gun over there who has arrest powers. I don't want to do bad shit because I'm going to get fucked up tonight if I do that shit. That's the way the job I think it should be done. Now, there's a different kind of cop who unfortunately is statistically incentivized through our current system, where I think that there is room for concern and room for reform, where it's basically a drug cop. He's a SWAT cop. He's a tactical bro. He's a stats bro. And instead of patrolling the same streets over and over and over again, what he would do is walk up to a member of the community that he knows has drugs on his person, jam his hands in his pockets and say, hey, bro, do you mind if I search you? And while the guy doesn't even have time to object, he finds a rock of fucking crack or a little bit of meth or a little bit of fucking weed, and then he takes that person to fucking jail. And while that person is in the jail cell getting processed for basically a crime that wasn't going to affect anybody, it was a homeless guy who was going to go find his little corner and consume a little bit of drugs. what ends up happening instead is, since that cop is out of his zone and the entire department is stretched thin, somebody gets killed in that fucking zone that night because the cop is no longer there, which then further justifies law enforcement response in that area. So the worse a community does, the better law enforcement does, because they can justify their presence through increase in crime stats. So I will concede to you that this is statistically perverse, that plenty of law enforcement officers do the wrong thing by incentivizing bullshit tiny crimes, but I'm not going to tell you that the entire institution doesn't serve a purpose.
Okay, now that makes sense.
Paradigm first.
That makes sense. Okay, now you've reached a point where I think I can see where you're coming from. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but I might say something here that's just going to make everybody's point mute. It sounds like you did a lot of great work, and I'm not going to knock that, because humans don't get their work knocked, so don't take this as a knock towards that. But it feels like you as a human being had more compassion and empathy than the system that employs you.
Sure.
Because, okay, so sure. So at this point, all that's going to happen here back and forth is that I'm going to tell you that the presence of cops has ruined my neighborhood by that perpetual cycle. And at the same time, having them there won't bring us back up out of it. Because once you, and this is a conversation that Black people have a lot, once we all act right and learn our positions, they're still going to pick on us. They still want to justify their $6 million budget. Now, in a town like Friendstar, Iowa, sure. Like, you know, as a rash of serial killings, we need police to get down onto the top of it. FBI comes, yo, this is our jurisdiction now, leave, blah, 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 whatever. The system will work the way it works, and hopefully they catch the killer. But for like petty crimes, grand larceny, like the smallest of individual like tracks in which we think about how police interact with people, the majority of the people just want to be left alone and do not cause harm to others. Now, this goes into a whole other level about drug trafficking and neighborhood substance abuse use. And, you know, we could swing it all the way back to the 70s with crack and Reagan. Okay. We could do all of the stuff. But what we end up with is, I'm going to tell you that police are a negative factor in my life, not because of the interactions that I've had. That sure helps, but because of the interactions the people I interact with have had. To the point where nobody wants to call the police in any scenario. Before we
go on, just a couple things. Thank you for the $5, Fondue. Thank you for the $10, Muda Agarwal. Thank you for the sub, Inception Otter. Gang, if you want to support the channel, if you like this, right? Support community paneling. Okay, community paneling with Wick by donating and subbing to the channel, throwing bits, throwing super chats. I love you all. Appreciate it. I want to give Viv a chance to respond as well if she'd like, but then I have a question for the audience, for all of you. So go ahead.
So what I heard is like, I'm a good cop, and this is how I think copping should go. Okay, I should cop like this. Okay, yeah. And you say you have like the figures to back up that there's that having that police presence helps reduce the crime in the neighborhood, right? That's entirely possible. I'm not even gonna fucking bother contesting you on that, because I don't know, I used to shoplift a hell of a lot of shit, but if I saw a whole bunch of security guards in the store, I'm not gonna fucking shoplift anything because I don't want to go to jail that day. All right. But like but when we talk about like how police function like on a wider scale, I mean Paradigm already hit on some of it, right? But also there's all those situations in which you absolutely do not want police to be involved. In the case of them, for one, like carrying out unjust laws, like I said about the fucking Florida trans kidnap bullshit, right? Two, when you're attempting to protest in any fucking capacity whatsoever, it's the police that are going to come down and fucking in the United States tear gas you, in the United Kingdom beat the fuck out of you with batons, whatever, right? There are so many fucking situations in which we simply do not need police. If the role was simply, I'm going to drive around this neighborhood and I can intervene if I see somebody engaged in some sort of violent crime or trying to commit a burglary or something, right? you have to be fucking careful with that shit too, because enough black dudes have been shot trying to get into their own house when they forgot their fucking key. But like, if that was all the entire function of the police, then we'd be having an entirely different fucking conversation, right? And it's not just about that. It's also about the accountability for when things go wrong. When you do see somebody you think is trying to break into a fucking house, and it turns out to be some black dude who's left his key, and you just fucking you beat the crap out of him and take him to a fucking jail cell. That you know, there's so little fucking accountability for that, right? It's very, very difficult to get the to get. You can't get the time back that you spend in a fucking jail cell. You can't get that fucking cop fired, like, and that enables really harmful, scary fucking shit, like the LA sheriff's gangs, right? Because there is that culture of the police consistently protecting each other, so they can get away with more and more and more heinous shit. The police are above the law because they are the law.
We got to take shit one thing at a time, and what we're also talking about, which I don't think you guys are going to disagree with, is we're talking about like structural issues. And I think structural issues can be addressed, and they can be addressed with good policy. So for instance, like if we look at the Portuguese model on like drug consumption and all that kind of shit, where they basically like decrimmed most like possession levels of drugs, and then they focused on traffickers. If they statistically showed that they reduced crime, cops were more focused on different things, et cetera, then I have no fucking problems with that. I'm for whatever is efficacious. And then also what I would say is, you would be surprised if part of your indictment, which I heard, is that cops are doing too much shit that has nothing to do with deterring, preventing, or solving crime. I think most cops would agree with you. And so if you approach them and you say, you're pieces of shit, you have no positive impact on the community, you make things worse, you need to be defunded, we're going to slash 30% of your fucking budget and all that kind of shit, you're basically starting from a no-go negotiation. And I'm not just talking about political optics, I'm also talking about policy structure. Whereas, if you approach the current institutions, the current municipalities, counties, and all that kind of stuff, and you say, hey, listen, we appreciate the hard work that you guys are doing, but we think there's a few things that are fucked up with the system. Look at this example, look at this example, look at this example. We think that instead, here is a different way to manage the municipality, in which we have this peer-reviewed fucking study that shows that we can reduce crime by XYZ% if we invest in this different social structure, and it's going to require this funding, which I know your cops are not going to want to give up any money, so how about we cut it out of a future budget instead of what you're currently doing right now? That's an infinitely easier conversation. And on top of that, final point, police administrators, union folks, captains and lieutenants and admin officers and chiefs of police and city commissioners, they might have a problem with that, but you won't have a problem with the patrolman. The patrolman will not give a fuck, because if you tell a patrolman, I will get you a social worker who is going to take all of the psychiatric calls so you don't have to fistfight people who are throwing their shit at people. Instead, we're going to send a hippie in fucking Birkenstocks to go talk to him for 20 minutes, and they'll call you if they need to. I'll wrap it up. Then basically, you would actually sell that to law enforcement.
I mean, you don't have to disparage mental health care workers. I mean, they have to have.
We've been disparaging law enforcement for hours. Come on.
Well, I mean, they do work for an institution that murders more people than pretty much anybody else in America. So,
except for like drug organizations, crime organizations, all that kind of stuff. But sure, yeah, whatever. You know.
Like,
okay. I have a question. I have a question.
And if they are ordered, right, by their higher ups, to go and break down that fucking protest, even if that protest is freely fucking enacting their free speech rights, right, within the context of the law, right, then those police are going to go in and they're going to fucking break people up and they're going to arrest them.
Because they want a chance to beat up fucking hippies. Like, what do you want? Angels? They don't exist.
Okay. I'm saying it don't matter what fucking cop it is. They're all going to do that, right? If you're still a cop in Florida, that means you have agreed to kidnap fucking children from their family, right? This is why people say ACAB, right? And it's not to convince the fucking cops. It's to convince. It's a slogan that helps to dissipate the idea that cops are your fucking friends, right? When you're an activist, when you're engaged in the fucking community, when you want to protest, when you want to do fucking anything, the idea that cops are your friends is fucking stupid. Here in the United Kingdom, wait, just one last thing, Wick.
Please.
Here in the United Kingdom, right, we just had protests against the coronation of the new king, okay? I know, stupid fucking country, we still have a king. Okay?
Oh, sorry, I meant based Republicans doing protests, my bad.
Yeah, right? And so there's a group called Republic, okay? Very liberal Republican group, right? Not Republican in the US sense, Republican in the anti-monarchy UK sense, right? Very liberal Republican group. And they decided what they were going to do was make sure, because we've got ever more oppressive anti-protest laws coming in, they wanted to make sure that they liaised with police to make sure that everything that they planned and everything that they were doing would be legal, right? So that they would be able to carry on with their protest. Now, they liaised with police for fucking months before this happened, told them when they were going to protest, where they were going to protest, how they were going to protest, and when they showed up to protest on the day, the police arrested their fucking leaders immediately, took all of their fucking signs, and fucking scuppered their ability to protest. So that's what ACAB is for, to convince fucking idiots like Republic that they shouldn't be doing that shit because it fucked them.
Okay. A couple questions for all of you, right? I'll start with this. To Paradigm and Vivian, right? We have engaged with me in this hypothetical. We have gotten to a world where we've done the things. Crime has been reduced through measures to reduce poverty and things like that. We've abolished the police. What is to keep organized groups of individuals from banding together and creating their own violent, oppressive forces to basically run rampant, right? Like, how is the community police go? Like,
stop them from doing it now.
The police are. The police are more powerful, and they will break them up.
Do they?
Not always. Not as much as they should. But do you think it will be less or more of those if we take away the police as it stands today?
I think if we address
if right-wing militias and things like that didn't have to worry about the FBI, if right-wing militias and groups such as Proud Boys,
yes, I know you're trying to appeal to me, but like as I said at the very beginning of this fucking conversation, if we address those root causes of crime and gangs and so on, right, then there will be much less need for much less need to quote unquote police them, right? Because there will be less of them.
Yeah, but less.
We don't disagree with this.
Yeah, like less doesn't mean
nobody here is saying
right.
Get rid of the police and
so
nothing
even
else.
if you have instead of 300 militias that are going around, you only have 100. You still need some sort of police force to combat that 100. No.
Yeah.
Your question assumed, right, that it's get rid of the police and nothing else changes, right? I already said very early on in this conversation that sure, you are still going to need someone to deal with serious violent crime, right? You're still going to need something, some kind of institution to deal with violent crime.
I guess that's what I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to get at. What is that thing?
That institution is going to look a hell of a lot different than the police does today. And we've just been talking about the ways in which we think that the policing could be stripped down, right? Like the police force that me and Connor might just have got round to envisioning is one that where Connor just drives around the block repeatedly and has the power to stop somebody if they're engaged in some kind of violent activity. That is very, very different from the fucking police force that you have today in ways that Connor already explained. So I don't understand why you're asking this question, because I feel like it's already been answered by the conversation that we've had.
But can I just answer it because I'm a misogynist and I love talking over gender non-conforming people. So basically here's the thing. So I think that 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 envisions optimizing the system and to a point that law enforcement as it currently exists, a person in a blue uniform wearing a tin on their shoulder and a gun on their hip is no longer required by society. I don't think that's possible. Okay, I don't. But at the same time, I think that if cops were sitting around on their asses with nothing to do, I literally think there's reports of Japanese cops, they're creating shit to do because they're so fucking bored because they have nothing to police. Like, that's an ideal society where your police officers are bored. So if we need to push that way by getting better education, better food programs, better this, better that, better access to opportunity, eliminating food deserts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm sure we can design a hyper-utilitarian society that reduces law enforcement.
I don't think anyone's against that.
What happens to the stat whores that you mentioned earlier? The guys who want to get the most arrests and shit. Like, they're not going to sit on their
ass and die. I don't give a shit about them. They're fucking douchebags.
But they're not going to sit on their ass bored. They're going to go out and find crime, right?
True. No, they will. Okay, they will, but at the same time, like having that guy run around, jam his pockets into some fucking junkie's jam his hands into some junkie's pockets, take that person to jail, waste that person's days for 2 days or 3 days, and then a homicide resulting because that law enforcement officer is no longer present. That is the current paradigm. Whereas if we did the utilitarian optimization that we're talking about, and also if we change laws, so law enforcement is going to do what they're told to do. That's what they're going to do. So if you decrim fucking possession of drugs, he can no longer use a junkie as an excuse to get off the road for 2 hours or 3 hours so he can do paperwork and waste the court's time. I am perfectly okay with fucking that guy over because fuck that guy.
But that guy is like a lot of fucking police officers, right? You said yourself that
I would say it's easily 10%. Easily 10% of the population are stat hounds, SWAT officers who don't care about the people they're policing. They just care about getting pretty little statistics.
10% might be underestimated, but
that's fine. I don't think a lot of these people are competent to be who I'm talking about.
I want to toss it to.
You said the system incentivizes this kind of behavior, right? So what, like,
sure, change the system.
Okay, so what about the system incentivizes this kind of behavior?
The drug war. The drug war is number one. Like that's it. So if you like, marijuana should be medicinal or recreational. Okay, let's just start there. Okay. Then when we're talking about the harder drugs or whatever, when we're talking about meth, coke, et cetera, I think that possession quantities, anything under 3 grams or something like that, that should be like it should be either a criminal or a civil citation. Here, pay the court $50 or $100. Here's a reference for fucking rehab, and go fuck yourself. And maybe after your 10th arrest for minor possession,
this is where your view is too narrow, right? Where it doesn't encompass what I'm saying. Okay, so you're on the right track, right? This isn't like me having a go at you or whatever. But sure. you say basically decriminalize to a certain extent drugs for personal use, right? Maybe you give him a fine. Maybe you give him a thing to like tell them to attend rehab or whatever, right? What the abolitionist says is not like give this person a fine and order them to attend the equivalent of AA meetings for drugs or whatever, right? But make sure that we have in our communities like needle clinics, safe places for people to fucking shoot up, good resources for people who want to fucking get off, right? Other social services engaging with drug users to make sure that they have things like housing and mental health care to make it easier for them to get off drugs.
Okay, I view myself as the conservative.
I do want to get Paradigm in here at some point, right? So finish your point, and then I want to toss it to Paradigm.
So I view myself as the conservative or libertarian whisperer. Okay, I'm probably pretty centrist. I'm probably more left wing than a lot of rightoids. But I like to couch things because I feel like I had a right wing upbringing. I like to couch things in their language because I think some of these things are sellable to the right. So when you say needle clinics, or needle exchanges, what I think is basically you're going to create drug corners by taking a bunch of clean needles down to homeless people and all that kind of stuff. You're basically going to recreate Skid Row. That's not what I want to do. I don't want perverse incentive policy that basically fucks over the community, no matter how well intentioned. However, what's actually really interesting was I read that like Switzerland gave people heroin, and I was like, what the fuck is this Euro trash fucking incentive bullshit? Well, what actually ended up happening was I watched a documentary on their program. Their program is basically you can go to a clinic and they have doctors that will evaluate your needs case. They will wean you off of the drug and give you just enough of the drug within the quantities required in order to stave off your addiction. And they will help place you with like education and addiction counseling. So hopefully you can wean yourself off of the drug and then reincorporate yourself into society.
And this is in part what I'm talking about, right?
Sure, but you got to be specific, because if we're talking about like, let's just go down to Skid Row and hand out needles, then that's gonna be a problem.
Again, the practicalities of getting to the place that I want to be at, right? I'm going to be opposed all the fucking way by conservatives, and you can talk to me all you like about how to sell this to conservatives, how to incrementalize it so that it can get passed in policy and shit, right? That's all very interesting, all very valuable, but it's a different conversation than whether we should have this done, whether we should do this at all.
What goals
it seems to me we mostly kind of agree that we should be doing most of these things.
Okay.
I mean, if you're advocating for the Switzerland model,
sorry, Wick, I can do this in 10 seconds. Libertarians on the right will want to reduce state power. So basically, if you come to them and you say, I think using XYZ whatever, we can reduce the amount of people who are getting the shit kicked out of them by the state, you can sell that to a healthy chunk of the right wing.
Paradigm.
I hate to bring it to this direction, but I don't in the same way, because, okay, just to put it simply, we had this conversation in the 60s, we had this conversation in the 70s, we had it in the 80s, we had it in the 90s, we had it in 2003, 2007, 2010, 2013, 2015, 2017, 2019, and then the big one, Black Lives Matter,
but
2020.
Not on a WIC panel? WIC panels are within
I'll give you that one. Okay. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. It's repeating the same things that we were decrying for before. The reason why it's gotten to a point where I say ACAB and it would just be easier for me to dissolve the police system as a whole and try to replace it from there is because all of these ideas that you're saying are really awesome. And I want to make it clear to everyone who's listening. There are two people on the opposite side here of me who are agreeing that, like, at its core, there are rotten elements of the police force, the state arm of law enforcement, that are issues that cause more issues, that cause a cascading scale of issues. We are way past the point where if any of these ideas were worthy enough, people would have brought it up in the legislation. That's the problem here.
I agree with you. I don't think we are on opposite sides. I'm just trying to have a conversation at Connor's fucking level and try and work out where the bits are that we fucking agree.
No, I have a question for you, Paradigm.
Hold on. Yeah, talk for like 50 hours. Can I get...
Before you came on, I decided to not be as antagonistic and remove the fucking picture of the burning cop car with ACAB.
Damn, no, I wanted to see that.
Okay?
No.
You can put it up. I just had my second kid. I'm in a very relaxed mood.
But I'm gonna get in on this a little bit. Paradigm, do you think that the policing in the 60s and the 70s was the same as it is today? Do you not think we've improved immensely when it comes to policing in the United States? Like, just from a statistics perspective, right? Like,
I don't think it's statistics when it comes to human lives. That's it. That's just it. Like, the same way I made this argument about marijuana being legal, but black people still being trained to hide it when they see police cars coming around. You've already done the effect. You've already built that same effect. While police aren't hosing people down, they were during the protests. You see what I mean? It's like the balance going forward isn't the same as the balance going backward. You don't think we could
change that, though? You don't think that by over time, right, having better police in place, like having better stats, like I know you don't like to think it's stats, but most people do, and this is how we measure these things, right? Do you not think that over time we can turn it into being these effects eventually will be mitigated or reduced to an acceptable level, or...
It shouldn't be a level. Doctors who kill a patient by accident one time get disbarred. See what I mean?
Wrong. No. Okay, so this is where I disagree, okay? No. I think that over the past 70 or 80 years, there's been like marked improvements in like law enforcement quality, the way they interact with the community, whether or not you can be racist, whether
we don't abolish hospitals because one surgeon killed someone.
I don't think that's what anybody's saying here.
Well, hold on. And not just that, but the medical malpractice thing isn't totally accurate either, because I'm pretty sure like medical malpractice is like besides accidents, cancer, and heart disease, I think that's like the next leading cause of death. So there's plenty of like, medical accidents that happen all the fucking time, and we don't give a shit because basically it's just part of the system and it's not intentional. It's not malevolent. So I understand that like intentional and either negligence or malevolence. I would say malevolently, the system was designed maybe 50 or 60 years ago to disproportionately fuck over black people. And then now we're just kind of dealing with the consequences of that. But if you want to have minority communities inside the United States do well, obviously the thing is going to be to try to get the system to an ideal function as quickly as possible. And then hopefully over like 500 or 1,000 years, we can address your fucking intergenerational trauma. But I don't think that we're going to be able to solve intergenerational trauma in 10 or even 100 years.
To you, Paradigm.
I'm thinking.
Hmm.
Okay, that is just the. I don't have a response
Portland,
to
get
that. I will
backstage.
concede
Stop
that.
yelling
I
in
will.
chat. Get backstage. Hold on.
I will.
Portland,
I
get
will.
backstage.
I will concede that point. You are right about it being the third leading cause of death in the United States. But this still leads me back to that same point. No matter how many improvements we have, there is still that fear.
Sure.
You have to address that root cause of the fear. And that fear is only going to go away if the police radically reform themselves. We start implementing all of these systems. I just don't see that happening because that would require us actually helping people in America. And now I'm specifically going at America. I think it should be ACAB specifically in America for this exact reason, that we will never end up on a point where, oh, the police are improving, they're killing less people. Like, maybe none,
Yeah.
I wish we could start at 0 and restart is where I'm getting at. I want to start at 0 and then see where it happens. Right now we're at like 100 and nobody wants to bring it down.
This is Viv first, and then I'm sure you can respond to both of them, Connor. I'm sure, right?
But I mean, this is why, like, all these fucking things that I suggest, like, as policy changes and so on, right, are like I said at the start, are like decades-long fights that have been going on for fucking decades, right? Like, fucking same shit Angela Davis was fighting for in the fucking, like, early 60s, she's fighting for today, right? Like, there hasn't been that much of a fucking shift in terms of towards the things that she would like to see implemented, that I would like to see implemented, right? Which is why I, as an anarchist, advocate for attempting to do these things as best as possible, like, from the ground up. So that, like, if we're doing these things, if we're providing them for the community, if we're putting together our collective resources, if we're working together as communities to provide these things that we want, right? Social care, fucking housing, food, education, places where people can fucking do drugs, and doctors to help them get them off them, right? We have to organize as people, and we have to create institutions and organizations that are dedicated to doing this, and just say and say fuck the police, because we don't expect the police to change anytime fucking soon.
Portland, are you here? If you're here, get in backstage, right?
That's the practical route for me, right? Which is why I don't really care what conservatives think
Portland,
of my fucking rhetoric.
Here,
I care about, like, what
else.
people who are already, vaguely in the same space as I am care about it. I just want to motivate them towards fucking action.
Okay, so let's address two things simultaneously. So 80 years ago, Angela Davis was legally prohibited from being in certain fucking rooms. And I'm pretty sure 80 years ago, like, black students going into schools with white students had to be enforced at gunpoint. So I'm pretty sure that, like, we've made some progress since the 1960s. Then when it comes to,
like, 60 years ago, I just said
did I fuck up the math? Yeah, I fucked up the math. Anyways, it's fine. 60 years ago, 40 plus 20, that makes sense. Okay, 60 years ago, excuse me, which actually kind of just, like, even reinforces the point. 60 years ago, black people weren't allowed in certain fucking rooms. They weren't allowed to drink certain water fountains. They weren't allowed to access to certain educational institutions, and that was deemed socially not even socially acceptable. It was deemed legally permissible to bar them from entire segments of the society just by the color of their fucking skin and their ethnic heritage and all that kind of fucking bullshit. So I would say that probably within the past 60 to 80 years, if we're now talking about trying to reduce, like, law enforcement homicides against black males, we're doing okay, if not great. So when it comes to, but I wanted to agree with Paradigm real quick here. There are some communities that are so broken that no matter how much law enforcement you add to it, that will not fix the problem. So, for instance, recently shooting a documentary with the neo-Nazi queen, Lauren Southern, we went to Western Baltimore, the Western District, and there's homicides during the day, there's homicides during the night, and you can see the food desert. There's no fucking schools in the community. The buildings are fucking dilapidated. They're all falling fucking apart. They barely got fucking power. Half of them have air conditioning. It's just a fucking mess. And so it doesn't matter if you add another 10 fucking cops, because basically all you're going to do is you're just going to push the violence out of the community. But then all you have is less murders in a community that doesn't have proper piping, doesn't have proper paint, doesn't have proper buildings, doesn't have proper water, doesn't have proper education, doesn't have proper access to nutrition. And I actually do see why Black people who have probably lived in this community for a century, I can see why they don't think that it's like benign neglect. They see it as fucking active malevolence, because they were basically quartered off into a part of the fucking city and left to fucking rot and wither and die. So I'm okay with like you being bitter, but then the analogy, I'll wrap it up with this. The analogy is like, if you and I were fucking Amish people and we see a cart and a horse fucking go into the ditch, you can fucking argue with me that it's the horse's fault that the cart went into the ditch, and I can fucking argue that the cart is overloaded and that's why it's in the ditch. But the point is, both of us should get into the fucking ditch and figure out a way to push that fucking cart back onto the road. And if we agree on that problem, then we could start working on what the actual solutions are.
In response to that, I'm just going to repeat what Vivian said. Then we wouldn't have the situation we have in Florida.
With what? With what? We're going to kidnap your fucking trans kids?
Less of that, more like you clearly have a wannabe dictator / wannabe fascist that's like creating these environments where society is more hostile towards groups of people. And
listen,
because of that, some of those
people, not the blacks, like, we're very progressive when it comes to the races. Okay.
So you would say that the targets just changed?
No, I would say the targets are different priority. And by the way, there's plenty of fucking social conservative Hispanics and social conservative Black folk in Florida. So
we'll get to that later.
That was a question I had on the docket, but go on, finish.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is like, we can go over the reasons why DeSantis is basically like a Trump neo-monarchist Christian nationalist or whatever the fuck. We can go over that if you want. But basically, like, the targets are very clearly not Black people, or, well, actually it is Hispanic people. It's the immigrants.
And
you know what? Never mind. I'll just go ahead and say 25% of the Republic, or 25% of the American population and half of the Republican Party are the mustache twirling villains that you pretend they are. So there we go.
I wanna make space for our late individual, very late.
Hey.
Portland.
Sorry, I get being scared.
Oh yeah, it wasn't that I also, much like Connor, recently had a second child, but apparently just love mine a tiny bit more because it was too big of a distraction to make it on
Counterpoints was based when he decided to give up his family's responsibilities to come on his panel.
True.
You need to take a lesson from him, sir.
Seems
very true.
irresponsible to be having a child in a city that's on fire, dude.
But
well, luckily the fire is what keeps us warm during those rainy, cold winters, and it's only recently started to heat up here in the lovely Pacific Northwest, so we're good for now. But keep checking on us.
Okay, what you got on the topic? You've been in chat saying some shit. Say some shit to their faces. Go ahead.
I think that I have an issue mainly with the position that the abolitionist side of the panel has taken, surprisingly, because it doesn't really sound like they're abolitionists. It sounds like they're reformists. Paradigm maybe a little bit more on the abolition side of things, but it sounds like, Viv, you concede pretty immediately that we need police, we need incarceration, you just want less of it. So to me, that seems like, and you want like a more socially responsible form of it. You want social safety nets and other systems built up around it to help reduce the need for it, but you concede that it's necessary. So that part, we don't even.
I don't think
we win. We win that side. Paradigm. What is your ideal?
Hey, stop one at a time. You did address her. Let her respond, and then you can address Paradigm. Okay, Vivian.
I'm gonna get some water.
So I don't think even Paradigm would deny that there are certain people who might need to be kept out of the general public, right? That, like, however they're incarcerated, I said earlier, it would have to look very, very different than it does today, because the carceral system in the United States, both in terms of like psychiatric incarceration and criminal incarceration, right? One could argue there's not really much of a difference between the two, but like both of them are extraordinarily substandard, right? Like,
yeah, no, I actually, Viv, the thing is, like, prescriptively, you've said nothing I disagree with. You've just labeled it as abolition, and you've basically described reform.
My position is no different than fucking 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖜 or 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖚 or any of the other
Your
people.
position is very different from Angela Davis's position on police abolition and prison abolition, Viv.
No, it's
you
not.
conceded immediately that we need to have prisons and the carceral system in some form.
No, I want
outlined a bunch of reasons why you guys made some
stop!
claims
I
about,
just
like,
got back.
most-
Stop!
telling me what is wrong with you.
Vivian.
Stop telling me what I think, right?
I listened to you say what you think for over an hour.
Okay, well, it's fine. Obviously, you misheard, or you're fucking stupid and didn't understand. One of the two,
You're fucking.
right?
You gotta let
Angela
Viv finish.
Davis
Stop.
here,
You
Warren.
made an accusation. Let Viv respond,
What I
and then
said
you can
was,
respond.
right?
She responds
Obviously,
so much.
there are some very extreme cases where people need to be kept away from the general population for everybody's safety, right? Whatever that looks like, I said, will look nothing like the carceral system of today. That's what I said.
Describe what the carceral system for violent criminals looks like in your ideal world that's so distinct from the carceral system we have now in the developed world that you can't even call it prison. Please describe it.
In the in the United States? Well, it's not going to look like a whole bunch of people who are seriously fucked up, right, being fucking like herded into a cage with a whole bunch of other people who are seriously fucked up, right? You need to have institutions that are prepped to care for, rehabilitate, and provide for the people who are in those institutions. And if
those are the support systems,
and only when it is absolutely 100% necessary to separate somebody from the general population do you do so, right? That's it. So I'm talking about psychiatric hospitals that are much, much kinder, much, much better equipped.
There are thousands of people per year that commit violent crimes up to and including murder that would need to be housed in a system of incarceration where they could be able to access those rehabilitative and social support mechanisms that you just described. It's just prison with more words.
And the more that we address the root causes of crime, right? Poverty, lack of education, lack of mental health care, etc., drug addiction, and so on, right? The faster the rate of those people is going to drop. Like I said from the very fucking beginning, the ultimate goal is that you need to incarcerate basically nobody except for like extreme edge cases who are like, I don't know, fucking serial killers who are just born wired to want to mutilate people or something.
Well, okay, what if they just kill one person? What if it's just a person who's like, you know, driving recklessly because they're shithoused at 120 miles an hour and they run over my kids? What happens to them?
I don't know, but I don't think that putting
you should be able to fucking answer that question.
No, I shouldn't.
Oh my
God.
I
don't need to answer that question.
This is day one,
right?
Day one shit.
No, I don't need to answer that question.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Motherfucker.
Viv,
I was going
you
to.
have a serious position, Vivian. You're a reformist with extra words, and most of them are smug.
Okay, you got stop. Portland, I'm going to mute you for a moment.
I was going to answer your question, right? but it's a silly question because the world that I'm talking about. Yeah, you good? So the world that I'm talking about does it. I mean, if you're just going to sit there giggling like a little cunt, then I won't even bother like addressing you. I can have this conversation. I can have this conversation with you.
See your face.
I can have this conversation with the adults in the room. Okay. You're so fucking mad. Are you like just mad that I exist? Is it an anti-Viv problem that you've got right now?
Can I?
You just fucking like
Can you
what?
just,
what
I want to toss it. I want to stop. I want to toss it to
okay.
I don't finish your point quick. Then I want to toss it to Paradigm, and I want to toss it to Connor.
I'll answer his fucking questions. Fine, right? So what I would say is that we need to look into the reasons why a particular individual would have got so fucking wasted and driven so fucking recklessly that they fucking ran over a kid, right? And we can address those things both on a societal level and on an individual level. Now, that person being incarcerated for the rest of their life does absolutely nothing to solve the problem of drink driving and fucking vehicular homicide, right?
Nobody said the rest of their life, Vivian.
Sorry?
Nobody said the rest of their life.
That's what you get in the United States 9 times.
Yeah, but I'm not asking about the United States. I asked you to describe in your ideal justice system, because you have conceded that some capacity for justice is like institutionally necessary. How does
what do you mean by justice? Because currently
the segregation of the violently murderous portion of the population from the rest of the population to safeguard their health and safety.
It was a rhetorical question because, as far as I can tell, right, justice does not exist in the United States, right? What you have is a punitive system wherein somebody makes some infraction on the law and is then punished for some arbitrary amount of time that the US courts and the fucking legal system determines is enough to pay for whatever they've done. This does not make the person who has lost their child whole. It does not help them. It does not support them.
You're
right?
dodging the question.
No, I am not dodging the question. You're asking. No, you're asking.
You're telling me, you're giving me critiques with the current system.
Why is he
I'm asking you to describe yours.
You're asking fundamental questions about justice, right? And I'm talking about what justice is, right? Justice is not somebody being punished for a crime. Justice is a
I conceded your particular version of it. I gave
Portland, oh my god, I want to do the meta. Let me be Mr. Girl for a second. Holy shit.
Just to finish the sentence, that's all.
Okay.
Justice is a redress of the situation such that you can achieve as close to balance as possible, right? To make the person who has been harmed whole and to try and prevent future occurrences of this harm occurring, right? So it would depend is the fucking answer. And I can't give you a better one than that, right? Because we're just talking about a very...
Portland, chill. Holy shit. I'm gonna come up to fucking Portland with a goddamn tranquilizer gun and fucking shoot you with fucking meth. Relax.
Because there were no cops.
Okay, we'll smoke on it.
Okay, sounds great. So basically, this is the reason why I don't care whether or not 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 is a perfect abolitionist. Because basically, when you talk to 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙, forgive me right now, like when you talk to 𝕵𝖎, or if you talk to Demon Mama, or if you talk to any of the anarchitties or the ancoms or whatever, anyone who is not 14 will basically concede that this is like a centuries or millennia long project. They don't see humans evolving into being capable of living without a state instantaneously, and they also don't see a state conceding power within like 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. So they're talking about a long-term ideal for humanity, and I don't really give a fuck, because the things that we could talk about that I think are infinitely more productive about than whether or not 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 is the perfect anarchist is things that we could do to the system now that would actually satisfy all involved parties. So as I mentioned earlier, I think law enforcement, if you approach them like a dickhead and you say, we're going to cut 30% of your funding, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, and you don't even help the community, you're not getting anywhere. Whereas if you say, hey, we want to try out these programs. We think that they're pretty effective for reducing crime. We're going to give you field social workers, and they're going to take all of your mental health calls. We're expecting that to reduce the Baker Act violence in the community by 10% or 20%.
Why not?
You have less work.
Okay, I got paid to ask a question.
Why do we care about what?
I'm going to ask a question I got paid for. Capitalism. Okay. $5 for the ACAB crowd. If sadists are attracted to becoming cops, what will happen to them when the role of cops disappear? Like for the current like
if sadists are attracted to becoming cops,
which
you know, okay, so I'm gonna chime in. I was trying to stay as that. That is the answer. That is the answer. But let's have some fun with it. Let's have some fun with it. You were paid. You were paid for this question, so I'm gonna see what I could do with it. What happens? Well, that's a funny thing that you mentioned that. because kind of the issue with cops is that they're pulled more into white supremacist ideals than they are like leftist issues, and that's to be expected. You literally see the worst shit probably ever every day while you walk the beat. I'm sure Connor can attest to that. Not the worst shit ever, but like you see shit that changes you, you know, PTSD, etc. Like I can't, in any world, I'm never gonna say that like there hasn't been a moment where cops have stopped like the worst things from happening. We're not going to go in that direction because one way or another in my society, in my ideal world, or in his ideal world, there's still a force that's stopping somebody. Like if they cry out for help and they get assaulted, there's somebody who's like, yo, don't punch that lady. And they stop it right in the middle of the time. That's going to, we're all going to end up at some point where somebody's going to be a good Samaritan somewhere.
Sure.
Or
Paradigm.
But so now to land it down to the what do you do with those people who like really want the power and now they don't have a place to like get hired for that power structure? Just look at what happens now. They'll just find another place. They'll just find another group. They'll just find another Reddit Discord. They'll just find a Reddit Discord.
Politics.
They'll find another Reddit page. Yeah, politics.
Yeah,
like
become
lawyers.
we're gonna
There are countries where
it's
they
like
don't
we're gonna
have,
feed
like,
into these systems.
There are countries where they don't have very readily available police, and they have things called, like, my wife's from the Philippines, and she likes to talk about a thing they have there called the barangay. It's basically a civilian militia that exists in the town to, like, deter crime and enact extrajudicial justice in the event that crimes do take place, or activities that the neighborhood considers unsavory. And I'm sure that you guys can imagine a world where the community polices itself just as badly or worse than the institutions that have things like oversight and governance, right?
Sure, that's why throughout this entire conversation, it has never been a one-pronged get rid of the police, reduce the police, defund the police, whatever, right?
I know. You've made some weirdly salient points. I'm disagreeing with you on the optics of how you've presented yourself because it's counterproductive to what you want. But you've made nothing but like...
No, Miss Vivian Wolf is being pragmatic, you bitch.
I'm interested in communicating.
No shit, but she's acting like she's not being,
I'm interested in
kind of what I took issue with.
I don't give a fuck about optics. I'm interested in communicating what I think and what I think are actual material steps that we can take towards things, right? I don't actually care about what I think is an incredibly naive fucking conversation that people have with basically every political ideology, whether it be ANCOM, ANCAP, communist, fucking whatever, right? They will go, well, what is your ideal world, right? And all of these particular ideologies, liberalism, conservatism, they all have like a vague idea of some kind of utopia that they want to arrive at. But what they actually are is philosophical frameworks through which they see the world, ways of analyzing the problems that they face and how to react to those problems in order to put to move things in the direction that they think they should move in, right? For whatever reason. From fascist to anarchist, that is what a political philosophy is. It is not the construction of a utopia.
No, okay, hold on.
I'm aware that the process of incrementalism is good.
Okay,
No,
but
I'm not talking about
come on,
incrementalism.
just super fucking based, goddammit. Just let it be based for a fucking second. Okay? No,
I agree with it.
This is actually really cool because I'm sure there's some fucking postmodern analysis or whatever that says the reality is not the ideologies that we hold up. So oftentimes what abolitionists or leftists or progressives or communists or socialists are saying, like, you have the liberal ideal of, equal justice before the law or the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. But if you look at the reality, the truth is that these ideals are not applied. And so what liberals, or like I would say capital L liberals or libertarians or Republicans or whatever, what they say is, well, we need to double or triple down on the system because basically if we double or triple down, we can better realize these ideals. Whereas a lot of people who want a completely different system say, no, let's just rip it all to shreds. And so here's the thing is, like, I fucking think that ripping it all to shreds is fucking stupid because if you look at all the revolutions of the past like 500 to 1,000 years, basically the chaos immediately after a revolution is fucking horrific. And then two, I actually do think that like liberalism, as much as liberals are fucking pussies and cucks and can't articulate their fucking worldview, I think having articulated bills of rights and a republic that can articulate those rights and security institutions that enforce those rights is all fucking based. And so I think it's just it's a point of like, I am never going to want to go where 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 wants to go, where we don't even have a state anymore, because I cannot philosophically differentiate between a state and a government. I think those are the same thing. I think they're institutions that wield power over people. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's where we fundamentally differ, right? And we differ in both the steps that we would take and the reason I say that I think we probably don't need a state is because a state, as I currently envision it, what you said, right, the ability to wield power over other people is something that I think that we should try our best to reduce, because wielding power over other people is the only means by which oppression can occur, right? If you get rid of the ability for one person to wield power over another, you get rid of the vector for oppression.
Okay,
right?
but let me ask this question.
You can agree or disagree with that, right? But like that's why I say that I don't envision a state. It's not because I have a perfect idea in my mind of what a stateless society looks like. It's because a state is antithetical to my moral values.
Okay, but this is where I think a lot of people, including myself, get frustrated with the concept of anarchism or whatever, is because when we're talking about like bad actors, whether or not they're malicious or negligent or whatever the fuck, and then we talk about like enforcement of contracts, where we're talking about like people delivering goods and services at an expected time so everybody can mutually benefit from the community. When we have people who violate those contracts, we expect somebody to step in and try to make those contracts correct. And if you have a society in which you don't have any kind of authority over another person, then all you really have is the freedom to disassociate. And unfortunately,
I mean, essentially all you're talking about essentially all you're talking about is what the Earth looks like at the moment with all these different fucking nations and shit, right? It's like some nations are much stronger militarily than others, and can militarily and economically than others, and can enforce their will upon others, right? And through collective power, you can enforce those things within your communities as well on a much smaller scale. That's what conservatives whine about cancel culture being, right? Like, it does it on all levels of society. We do this automatically without necessarily somebody having to step in to intervene and be the police, right?
But there's outliers.
So I would advocate for mediators to begin with.
I want to
eventually it becomes
for a minute. I want to toss it to Paradigm. He's been trying to get in, so I want to give it to him. If you've lost the plot, I have a question for you too, but I want to
give me the question.
Okay, the response or the question, I should say. So you spoke earlier about how a lot of Black communities, right? Within Black communities, at least according to Gallup, a lot of them still support the police. A lot of them are against even defunding. In fact, a lot of them want, about half to be specific, want more funding, right? If like how do you address that when most
that's easy.
What you want?
Yeah, I don't even need to nuance that. That's just easy. The answer is a lot of people aren't educated on the issues with the police because they don't run into them often. That's the honest truth. Most Black people generally stay out of the lines of, and I'm really being serious about this, especially in inner city situations. Most people believe that by funding the police more, we get rid of the hooligans. It's a separation inside of a Black community. That's the honest answer. And I can't have this conversation past this point because it would require a level of empathy that's like,
Paradigm, can I ask
designated
you a
to certain people. Absolutely.
Okay, so earlier you made the...
Thank you for understanding, Connor. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Earlier you made the statement that like if there were more like Hispanic and brown people involved in like immigration enforcement, that they would have a lighter hand and a more humane like set of behaviors
assume so, yes.
with them. Okay,
yes.
So how do you square that with the fact that 30% of ICE agents and 50% of border control come from like Hispanic countries? Like there are people of Hispanic
descent,
so
militarization
that very, very heavily in the system right now.
Right. It's the system. That's how I'd respond to that. It's the same issue that I'm having, or that they two were having earlier when it comes to the type of people that police neighborhoods. It's not them. It's the system that they're being driven to by the laws and the Like you. Sorry, let me put this in a better phrase because I feel like I'm jumping
I want to give
ahead
him
in
some
my head.
space, Connor. Let him
Yeah,
cook for a minute,
I'm
right?
listening.
That was a
but
good
I
question.
have
That was a
something
good
on the tip of my
question.
tongue.
That was a good question. So, and I hate to bring it here, but maybe because I know you've talked about it a few times. We've tweeted back and forth a few times. It's the same idea as like Hispanics being white supremacists. How is that possible? Like, I can't. That at that level, now I have to say, even if I were to put all Hispanics in that group, they're still enforcing a border policy of the United States, and Joe Biden sucks at like border policy. Like, you see what I mean? I can't fathom or connect the two because it shouldn't work that way. And it is, and that's a shame and a failure of not only us as a people, but that system itself, ICE and immigration.
Okay, but Portland, hold on. Let me interject real quick because I have a counterexample that's very pertinent. So we had people. I was hired from outside the community that I policed, but I was raised with like very Christian, pacifistic, turn the other cheek, professional, corporate, white fucking bullshit. Where somebody tells me to go fuck myself to my face, and I'm like, well, sir, that's just your opinion. I appreciate you. I hope you have a beautiful day. Here's a ticket. Whereas we had somebody that we had recruited from the community who came from a rough area, who quote unquote understood the community. And when that same person was cussing him out, he was like, oh, motherfucker, do you know who my family is? Oh, okay. So you know who I fuck with. Oh, okay. You're going to still be talking shit? And then he took off his fucking belt in order to fist fight somebody in the fucking street. Now, here's the thing. If we could all get onto a consensus that get like cops, when somebody's talking too much shit, we can take off our equipment and start fist fighting citizens in the street, and who wins, wins, and loses, and then we all go home at the end of the day. That's actually a contract that I would have relatively signed up for, because I agree with you.
Yeah,
I would love to beat somebody's ass and then go home.
I agree with you on that one.
Okay, hold on.
I know where he's coming from. That's why. I know where he's coming from.
But I don't think that's like a real societal solution.
That's going to be a terrible. That's going to be a terrible thing.
People are going to get hurt in really bad ways.
I understand where you're coming from. So I will say it again. It's power dynamics. For people who have never had power, to hand them it, they might not react in the proper way. And that is a structural issue with us and a society. At that point, I can't answer a solution for that, because that happens regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of job. You start making $100,000, you move up to upstate New York, all of a sudden you're talking down on everybody who you used to hang out with. That happens. And I don't.
Okay, hold on. I want to re-articulate what you just said, because I think people probably missed it, but I actually understand it. People not used to power, who are used to the social expectation of you talk too much shit, I'm going to pop you in the fucking mouth, then get invested with the power of the state, but then they still have the older moral system. So it's actually almost like refreshing that they have the old moral system, but then it's like, it's also tied to the nefarious arm of the fucking state. So yes. I get it. I just don't think it would be a good system if we hired like 100% of people from the fucking community, and then every time somebody's talking shit, they're popping off their fucking battle belts in order to fist fight people in the street.
I mean, it's better than like
system.
It's better than like executing people in the street for like random shit, you know?
I'm meaning the guy that ran over my kids to incarcerate him. Okay, like I think that the system should have a mechanism for that.
True. Okay. So I'm meaning, but at the same time, like I do think it would be funny if we did set up a society where we're like, we can go one way or the other way. So like, sir, I caught you doing 115 miles, or I caught you doing 20 miles over the speed limit.
Culture.
Yes, exactly. So like,
box it out. That's what I'm saying. Box it out. Box, bro. Thank you. Like,
I want to articulate the entire example. So like, good afternoon, sir. My name is Officer Cotter from the blah 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 police department. I caught you doing 20 miles over the speed limit. I can either issue you a citation for $115, or you and I can fist fight in this parking lot.
Okay, for Christ's sake, I never thought I'd say this, but can we toss it back to 𝕵𝖎𝖏 for the most reasonable takes on the panel, please? Because
I was having fun with that, man.
Lost the plot.
Listen.
Viv, what do you think of this, proposed system?
It's very anarchist.
To have to fight for your justice in the streets? Or do you think that the systems
I think
that
it's
are in
ridiculous. I
place
think
can
it
be
doesn't.
reformed to like satisfy your grievances and still allow for some basic social safety?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it disempowers people who are like physically weak. Obviously, duh.
Nice.
It's very stupid. Disabled,
Women
disabled
will
people,
never have a say
people who
again,
are like
right?
quadriplegics or whatever never get anything.
We'll
Like-
have female cops. We'll have disabled cops. We'll have a cop in a wheelchair for the disabled people to fist
Okay.
fight on the side of the street. We'll call them
No.
specifically.
Oh,
It's
no,
fucking-
hey, you can't fist fight with this one. They have a disabled sign on their car. Get
Yeah,
in Jimmy, right? Bring
better-
Jimmy in. Wheel him
You're
in,
very-
right?
We'll have
You're very-
better representation. We'll have female cops. We'll have Hispanic cops. We'll have black cops. We'll have disabled cops. We'll have deaf cops.
I
and
don't-
we
I
can
don't
match
care.
you up
Very,
with
very
your
stupid.
cop to duel.
We don't arbitrate things through combat anymore. Okay, they tried that
Yeah.
like back in the Middle Ages, and they dropped it really fucking quickly. Okay, because it led to some dumb shit. All right. Because they were like, well, God will sort them out. Basically, God, whoever wins obviously has God's favor. But it's
Okay.
it's
Law
a very
Can I ask
disproportionate-
Can I ask
have God's
Vivian and
favor.
Paradigm a question? I think one of the most popular like abolitionist inspired reforms in recent US history came in the form of the Chicago Police Department instituting a reparations program for victims of racially motivated police violence. Do you think that programs like this and increased accountability and like increased decentralization of police authority, do you think these kinds of things can be applied in a way that would address the majority of your concerns and make someone like Paradigm comfortable calling the police if they have a like home emergency that they feel they should be able to? Because I think it's bullshit that Paradigm doesn't feel like he can call the police if there's a fucking home invasion. I know that you have like systems of social safety that you feel you can rely on, but I think that the state, if we're going to have one, owes us a level of accountability towards their like need to protect us. So I just want to understand, like, if you guys think that extreme radical reforms like this can satisfy an abolitionist viewpoint.
I mean, if you think that that is an extreme radical reform, then that just kind of illustrates what I think we're both saying about how, like, it's never going to go far enough. But
Look,
the
it's
idea
literally cited as
that
You gotta let
victims,
him answer the question,
idea that-
Portland.
the idea that victims of police violence should receive some kind of compensation, like that seems like not a radical proposition at all to me.
It is not a radical proposition, but it is a proposition that was put forth, advocated for, and eventually succeeded in being installed by abolitionist advocates and people who were who considered themselves abolitionist advocates, civil rights lawyers, and people who organized around this specific cause.
Yeah.
And reparation, it is the first program of its kind in the country to offer reparations for racially motivated instances of police justice. Does it go far enough? Absolutely not. But what I'm asking you is if there is an ideal like set of movements and reforms that we can implement that would satisfy your kind of like your viewpoints without needing to tear everything down, rehire a bunch of the same people into a new police force, because guess what? Cops come from communities most of the time. So if you have community police, they're just going to be police that are called something different in a lot of cases. And I think that we need to, you know, be able to talk about what you actually want to see done if it's all about like meeting halfway and, you know, realistic solutions. I'm just
Okay,
asking-
that's a great question, and it is currently obviously being debated now. We had the quote unquote riots of the Summer of Love 2020. You know, if we want to play around with that, the way to solve this issue is starting to turn into a very black and white thing, because what I'm hearing across the board is no matter what we do with the police, the system that exists within the arm of the state will still override their compassion and judgment. They will still be forced into a situation where they say, yo, there's drugs in this building. We signed off the warrant. Bring the SWAT team, bring the raid team. They open the door, throw in the flashbang. We heard you had weapons. And then they flashbang a baby. Oh, I'm not talking about a hypothetical. That actually happened. You see what I mean? So now I feel like what we're ending up with is Do we keep the police or do we not? Because whatever we replace them with has to be radically different in order for us to not end up with the same problems. But we're all noticing that the problems just exist on their own.
Paradigm.
So,
I don't mean to
yeah.
interrupt you, but a question.
Talk to me, baby.
Replacing the police. Do you see that happening realistically? And then, like, what's the time scale you thinking?
26 years.
Jesus.
Okay.
26. That's very
26.
specific. How did you get
26
to that
years.
number?
Where?
President-
In fucking like Camden, New Jersey or some shit? Or fucking some
No,
fucking tiny
no,
ass
this-
fucking town?
No, this is across the United States. I think more people are getting a little bit more hyper aware of the abuse that the state enforces on them through police. They're recording more of it. They're having more conversations on it. Eventually, at some point, a lot of people are going to get up and say, the quote unquote riots of 2020 didn't work. All the BLM stuff didn't work. What happened? The police budgets went up. Like, what can we do? And eventually the community's just going to force the hand. Do we excise these people from our community? Like, what do we do with the if we can't fix them and they won't fix themselves, somebody got to go. Because if nothing's changing, no matter.
y'all, and I'm not saying black people, I'm saying the activists. Are you fucking kidding me?
It sounds
Do
like
you
what
think
you're
that
what you're-
normal? Do you think that normal people wouldn't like have an issue? Like normies wouldn't have like. You don't think normies wouldn't have an issue with that as well? Do you think this
Normies,
doesn't
you should
affect?
look at
have an issue.
Chaz as an
Let me be very
example.
specific. Yeah, exactly. Let me be very specific. So what happened was, in the wake of the George Floyd killing, there was public outrage and decent support for police reform and even police defunding and Black Lives Matter. All of those things were relatively popular. And what happened is you started...
95% polling approval for police reform.
Okay, hold on. I got to finish this point.
I know, I'm just saying 95%.
And then what happened was the summer of fucking love, where a whole bunch of fucking, burning and downtown areas getting fucking smashed, and, CNN reporters standing outside of fucking CVS pharmacies saying that the riots were mostly peaceful and fucking people getting shot and this kind of bullshit. And so all of that fucking happened, and it went from 30% approval before fucking George Floyd to 90% approval after George Floyd. I had fucking conservative customers literally saying like, hey, listen, I don't support the whole Black Lives Matter, organization, but generally speaking, I think that there's shit that's fucked up. I was literally having conservatives say that shit to me. But then after the fucking summer of love, popular support for this shit dropped back down to 30%. So no, there will not be some kind of random leftist excising of law enforcement. What's going to fucking happen is you being the activist people, will try to force this again. More people will die, and normies will side with law enforcement. Cut a liberal and a fucking fascist bleed. I think a fucking cut a liberal and a fucking statist bleeds. They fucking love the state. They love watching hippies get the shit kicked out of them.
All right, so you agree we have a problem.
Of course we have a problem. That's why I would be an incrementalist and work towards the solutions that I was talking about.
You know why the shit in the fucking summer of love failed, right? It was not because of the fucking activists. It was because of the fucking liberalization of the entire fucking movement and the narratives and the narratives around it.
Can you be more specific with the liberalization of the movement? Can you explain what that means?
Diffusing the when I say diffusing, I mean DIFF, right? Diffusing the message, confusing it to the point where people didn't know which fucking direction they were going in. Fucking snappy slogans like defund the police didn't get shit across, right? And the people who were talking about it on the fucking on the news, right, were like people who were not committed to any kind of abolitionist framework, who were very, very much like heavily reformist. So there was no coherence in that fucking movement. It was hijacked by liberals.
Okay,
and to add on to that, sorry, I know, but just to add on to that, remember that a lot of people showed up beyond activists to the Atlanta City Council meetings to speak up against Cop City after an activist got shot. I think that quite naturally, even though there are a lot of people who side with the state, I think they're more willing to side with people that they know. And I think that's the issue that ends up happening in these conversations. And I totally agree with Vivian. It was the liberalization of this entire movement.
Okay, hold on. I need to respond to that really quick because
just real quick. I think that people side with whoever they feel the violence is being done to, right? So that's why when you see protesters and stuff getting beat up by cops, police support for police drops. But when you see cities on fire, police support rises, right? So I think that people generally will side with whoever
people cheered. People fucking cheered for the Minneapolis precinct being burned down. What happened was both the liberalization of the movement
and what happened 30 seconds later.
The majority of people do not and at no point supported the burning down of police stations, Vivian. The majority of people.
You can address what I've got to fucking say after I finish fucking saying it.
Oh my God, you've already said so many wrong
things. There was a huge amount of support, right, for like the burning down of precinct 4, I think it was, right, and there was you threw me off. And it was the liberalization of the movement and the biggest fucking mobilization of media against an activist movement I've seen in my fucking lifetime, apart from maybe the fucking environmentalist movement here in the UK now. But like, it was fucking insane how the liberals cracked that shit out.
Wait,
okay, hold on. We disagree on things because basically the way that I felt during and the way like most people felt, I would say conservatives, Republicans, and centrists and normies felt, was that the media was providing cover to fucking BLM for months while horrific shit was going down. And they're like, it's not that bad. It's only a few dead people. It's only a few burned buildings. Don't worry about it. No fucking big deal. Like that was the fucking vibe from an exterior perspective. It's weird to me that you're on the opposite end. And then here's the thing, Paradigm. So Paradigm, I think that what's going to happen is I see a leftist opportunity where maybe leftists become popular. People like Hassan Piker become more popular. They popularize these narratives, abolishing the police, defund the police, whatever, and maybe you get a shot at it. But at the same time, what I also see is alternative media pundits like myself who are going to counter that narrative and basically dilute the movement. I'm going to liberalize your fucking leftist bullshit. And the way that I'm going to do that is when you're talking about police officers are just, wilding out in the fucking streets or executing black men left, right, and fucking center. What I'm going to say instead, when that comes up, is I'm going to say there's 15,000 homicides inside the United States on an annual basis. There's 1,000 law enforcement homicides inside the United States on an annual basis. When it comes to unarmed fucking people who are getting shot by law enforcement, I think it's like under 50. And when you're talking about like unarmed fucking black people who are killed, who are not in the action of committing like a serious crime or whatever, it gets down under 10. And in a country of 300 million, you stand a higher chance of dying from a fucking coconut hitting your head or a shark attack. So we can say that there's fucked up shit with the system. We can say there's fucked up shit with law enforcement. We can say that there's fucked up shit with our communities. But basically what you're doing is you're holding up a fucking shark attack to the American zeitgeist and you're saying this is happening all the fucking time. When the truth is, it happens every couple of fucking years or every year.
Somebody fact check that coconut thing.
Yeah, please. I was gonna say, I'm sorry. I'm gonna take the easy dunk here. Sorry, it's not your fault. It's just empty. Coconuts don't grow in New York City, and I don't live near water, so it's like. But
okay.
While I walk down the street,
150 people annually.
You said it.
Let Paradigm respond. Go
right,
ahead.
like you did say you have more of a chance. I mean, if you want to get like specific, I guess we could get into the whole odds of winning the lottery, getting struck by lightning thing. But like, I can control where I'm at. I can't control a police officer getting my building wrong and a SWAT team knocking down my door, and I respond with my concealed carry that's legal, and they're like, man with gun. But then again, we go back to the same. What was his name? Ryan? I forgot his name. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Rest in peace. He did the same thing in Arizona. Pulled out his gun when police were knocking at the door. He didn't know who was there. Just answered it nicely. They shot him. The poll is, I don't want to feel fear when somebody comes towards me and says, hey, there's something that's going wrong and we think you're involved.
I want to ask you about that actually. The fear thing specifically, if I may.
Go
Because
ahead.
I've talked to a few people who have expressed similar sentiments to me, not 𝕾𝖍𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖜 is specifically, right? Who's like have expressed that they are afraid of the police, that they fear the police. So I guess I would ask you specifically, do you think that's a good thing that, or not a good thing, that's the wrong word. Do you think that's a reasonable fear to have for someone who is in the Black community to be reasonably afraid of the police? Do you think that's a reasonable fear?
I think that's a reasonable fear for anybody.
I was about to say, everybody should have a reasonable fear of the police because they're armed servants of the fucking state who have the capacity to put you in a fucking cage, and if you resist them, they'll fucking kill you. Everybody
Except for what you said earlier about the upper and middle class white people who police generally serve for.
No.
That's what you did say earlier. You did say that.
Okay, but this is where I'm partially being conciliatory to you, because basically middle class and upper class fucking white people, there's no cops that are raiding our houses for fucking marijuana possession. They're barely going after us for fucking DUI, et cetera, et cetera. Well, yeah, of course, but at the same time, here there's like
and that's why.
Hold on, fuck! Let me say something. God damn it. So,
but I've got
poor urban, yes, poor urban design. So basically, white people can smoke weed in their fucking houses on their back patios on a quarter-acre of fucking land where everybody leaves them alone. Whereas if a fucking Black kid is smoking weed in the middle of an apartment complex, he's going to get the fucking cops called on him. Yes, absolutely. So, anyways, hold on. Let me talk about white people real quick. If a
talk about white people, I've been arrested. I'm a convicted felon. Let me talk about white people.
No, because you're poor white. I want to talk about middle class white.
I'm fucking very middle class, motherfucker. I have a 6-figure income. I own my house.
Why don't you donate to my channel more than
you piece of
God
shit?
damn it! You get. Let's have a rich white person off. Whoever donates
all right, hold on,
in the next 10 minutes gets to be the rich king of the white people. Okay, you white people. If you donate to me, right, whoever donates more subs to my Twitch channel in the next like 2 minutes can be king of the whites for me. Cool.
Hold on. No. I gotta finish this, and I need to say something real quick. Whenever rich people in this fucking space, whenever I have like an IT bro who I've like debated like 10 fucking times, and they're like, bro, I make like 200 grand a year, and I'm like, bitch, we've been friends for fucking 2 goddamn years, and you can't give me $5 a month on the fucking Patreon? Come on. Like, I know Portland is burning, and I aren't like boys like that. But Jesus Christ, Doobie said he spent $1,500 on fucking Call of Duty skins without fucking blinking twice. And I'm like, you don't have $10 for a fucking Patreon, you asshole? Anyways, so getting back to the fucking point, if a white person, upper middle class, drinks and drives, let's be real. The thing that fucking white folks are going to get busted with if they're rich is DUI. It just is, right? DUI and domestic violence. If a white upper middle class person gets caught with fucking DUI, the chances are what's going to happen is they know that they can hire a good lawyer, so they're not going to fight a cop. However, if they fight a fucking cop and that cop doesn't know that they're fucking the judge's son or some shit, they absolutely stand a high chance of getting their fucking ass kicked. So that's the thing, is like resisting arrest is fucking horrible. And y'all were talking about like, or is a really good way to get your fucking self injured. Y'all were talking earlier about how like you have to submit to servants of the state or else you risk death or serious bodily harm. Most normies think that's a good thing, and that's the way the system should operate. If you get in fucking contact with a servant of the court, then you should submit to the fucking court and then go through the judicial process, not fight a servant of the state in the fucking street.
Portland.
But the problem is,
I got to respond to that. I agree with that. That's
when you haven't done anything fucking wrong, you're exercising your fucking rights under the Constitution or the law of your country, right? And the police still have the fucking power to do that shit to you.
Yeah, you're right. You can beat the rap and not the ride. That's true. That's true of power immemorial.
Yeah, but it doesn't fucking exactly.
True, it did cost a lot of money to beat those charges.
It happens. one, yeah, you need money to be guaranteed to beat those charges. Two, you might not think that you're going to be able to beat those charges because you've heard enough fucking tales of other people going to fucking prison for similar shit, or sitting in fucking Rikers Island until they fucking die without even getting to the point where they get to go to trial or anything, right? You might get railroaded into taking a plea bargain, even if you're fucking innocent, because you don't have the fucking money to like fight a court case, and your solicitor comes to you and says, you know, you're looking at 5 to 10 years if you go to trial, or you can take this fucking 18-month plea deal and just go to prison, right? Even if you're innocent, like, a lot of people get scared into taking that shit. So there's good reasons for people to be fucking terrified of the cops, for starters. Yep. There's good reasons for people to fight the cops, right? No. Like I mentioned protest earlier. If you just acquiesce to police shutting down every single fucking protest you ever do, then you're never going to be protesting for fucking anything, because the police come in and run fucking roughshod over anything that is... It is bizarre how bad they can be here in the UK, at least. But we saw a lot of it during BLM as well, just fucking people being perfectly fucking peaceful and police firing tear gas canisters into people's fucking faces.
Okay. I know we're having a rousing discussion, but I want to be sensitive of everyone's time here, and I know I did say 2 hours. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go into closing statements. Right? And shout yourself out, give yourself all that. If I can get enough donations, right, we might open it up if you guys want to, and we can bring some more people on, or we could just end it. It's up to you, both audience and guests, whatever you feel like. But thank you for being here. Thank you for most of this discussion was actually pretty good, honestly, I think. Most of it, at least. And I appreciate you for coming on. We're going to start with Connor. Please give yourself a shout out.
Yeah, so my name is Connor. I do run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. Counterpoints 40K specifically is my biggest channel. We break down like animations from the Warhammer universe, add in a little bit of lore and context and real world parallels and all that kind of stuff. That's 95% of my channel views. So if you're into nerdy things, go ahead and check that out. You know, like, share, subscribe, dislike all that YouTube bullshit. Help me out. Give me some sweet advertising revenue. Also, I am like centrist, and I am, you know, like I'm pretty sympathetic to libertarians and conservatives because that's where I was raised, but I also think that some progressive policies can reach conservative ends. So I think that, you know, just because I sympathize with law enforcement, just because I'm a former law enforcement officer, doesn't mean that I think cops should be running ripshod through fucking black communities, jamming their hands in people's fucking pockets in order to take them to jail over fucking petty bullshit. Meanwhile, they let fucking homicides happen on the back end. That's bullshit. And if you actually care about black people or white people or crime, then that's not a system that you would advocate for. So that means that we need to take the good ideas of leftists and progressives, maybe like, we should have field social workers, good education, good access to employment, all that kind of fucking hippie goddamn bullshit. But then actually realize that those are going to achieve conservative ends. Edmund Burke, I'll wrap it up, I promise. Edmund Burke is the father of conservatism, and basically his whole philosophy is retain the structures and institutions, ideologies, and philosophies that work for your society and make them functional, and then allow the things that are stupid to die. And I like that philosophy, and I try to advocate for it as much as possible. So I love being here. Thank you kindly for having me. Oh, also, thank you, Ken. Sorry, last statement. Thank you, Ken, for giving me $100. That is fucking insane. He's done that 3 times in the past month. And I am currently on paternity leave, so he's basically paying my bills. So, Ken, if you ever want to say anything in the comments section, ask me a question, DM me. You want me to do some kind of content? You want to name my next child? You know, just shoot me a message. So, yeah, appreciate you.
Damn. No, well, thank you for being here. It's your first time on my show. I appreciate you coming on my show. I think you did excellent. Sorry for this is kind of scuffed with the scheduling and getting people on, but thank you for showing up, and thank you for being
here. I love my opponents. You were supposed to show up for some other fucking panel I did like ages ago, and you didn't. Can't remember what it was now.
Well, but you did this time.
Me or him?
Eh?
Who was supposed to shout you out?
What? No, you were supposed to show up for some other fucking panel I was on Wix like ages ago, and you didn't.
Oh, got you. My bad. I'm sorry. Sometimes I touch grass, sometimes I don't. So
Yeah, no, it's fine. I get it. I'm terrifying as a debate opponent.
Fair enough.
true.
Speaking of terrifying, Viv, what you got for us? Close us out, and then we'll get to the other
Sure,
thing.
I don't know. I think it's really amusing that Connor mentions John Burke in the context of this conversation, because one of the things that John Burke is particularly famous for is his advocation of the big lie, a philosophy which pervades conservatism nowadays, which is the idea that essentially Burke accepted that meritocracy was a lie, that some people through luck of the draw are going to end up at the bottom of the fucking pile, but that we need to lie to people and tell them that meritocracy is true and that the people who are in the upper positions are the people who deserve to be there, in order that we can keep order in society and the lower classes will not rise up and try and overthrow people like they did in the French Revolution. John Burke was a big advocate of the big lie, just like fucking Plato.
Socrates. Yeah, Plato.
Socrates. Yep. Was it Socrates? You know the one.
I think Socrates wrote it and Plato said it.
Sure. But and that fundamentally is what I have to rail against, is that I do not believe in that big lie. I see the world as John Burke saw the world for what it is. And I don't think that the solution is that we just have to let some people suffer and die so that the aristocracy can have their cake and eat it. I think there are solutions, and I think that those solutions are fucking ones that we have to do for ourselves, because the aristocrats, the state, whatever, they just want their fucking cake, and they will tell you any fucking lie that they can in order to keep eating that cake while you're fucking snaffling up the crumbs from the fucking sidewalk.
Where can people find you, Vivian?
Oh, I don't know. Fucking follow me on Twitter. I like people following me on Twitter because then I get more interviews and shit. I don't stream on my own channel at the moment, but I do a weekly show with Kevin Logan on his channel every Wednesday, 6 p.m. UK time. I think that's 1 p.m. EST. We pick a different cult every week and we talk about it, because that is my cults are my passion, really. That's my main gig, surprisingly, not just being a weird anarchist.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for coming and arguing passionately as you so often do, gang. Give her a Twitter follow. Next up, Portland. Even though you were late, I'll give you an outro. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'll keep it nice and brief. I appreciated everyone's time. I don't think a world with no police or incarceration system can ever practically exist. But I think that I'm on pretty much the same page as the majority of the panel with the majority of the panel prescriptions that were made about the problems that we have and how we can hopefully take some meaningful steps to address them. Thanks for having me, and yeah.
Oh, well,
Follow me on Twitter and Twitch, I guess.
Thank you for getting here. Honestly, better than 𝕵𝖎𝖎. 𝕵𝖎𝖎, if you're listening, you better be in the fucking hospital or something, because no showing on me ain't okay. Okay, you could at least give me a warning, like, yo, bro, I can't make it. But sorry. Well, I'll vent about that later. Paradigm, please.
My closing statement is simply this, and it's gonna suck to hear it, I know, especially on the internet. No matter what you say, if I say the word Cheerios, soda, and bread, it'll get clipped out of context. Somebody will say, "Why'd you talk about bread? Why this shit." I think that police abolition movements do fail in certain regards, and I wish they didn't. But I don't see the situation between police and the communities that they police getting better. I think there's more radicalization. I think there's a greater, bigger fear in this country about powers that belong to the state and how they are weaponized. And that's where I'm going to have to concede to everybody. I think everybody has their own issues with the police. Or let's even enhance it a little bit, because this goes into, NSA, CIA, tapping your phones, monitoring your shit. everybody has a concern and level of fear, and my poignant issue will always be that I feel like I need, me personally, to be the safest ever, to either be in a community that doesn't have crime, because then I won't run into police that often, or the police will be nicer to me. But I know in the back of my head that there will always be that, because I am Black, there is a heightened tension, regardless of if I respond correctly, regardless of if the cop is nice. Because that cop could say, you know what, I'm going to bring my supervisor. You're right. I did get this wrong. Let me check my rate. I'm going to bring my supervisor. Supervisor's hot-headed. Had an issue with a traffic stop, and his boy got killed. Brought back the PTSD. I reach for my wallet. He says, give me your ID. Gunshot. These are irrational fears that I shouldn't have, but I've been given a reason to. And nobody has given me a reason not to. And that's just the way I have to live until things change. With that being With that being said, I'd like to thank Portland for coming in hot. Did make me think a little. Did put me on my toes. I do need that. Thank you to Connor for not being Connor all day. We had some fun. We had some laughs. As always, Vivian, it's a pleasure. Wick, thank you for having me. You know, I don't do these things often because I try to be that ringer, that guy that they call in when there's an issue that needs to be solved. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who do not know, I am _paradigm_shift on Twitch, on Twitter at Marquise Paradigm, and on YouTube at youtube.com/theparadigmshift. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, and I'm feeling nasty about it because now I can monetize that channel. So come on over and subscribe. I just talked to FD Signifier, and everybody seems to love it. Go and be doing more content with them. If you're interested in what I do, I play video games, I talk politics, I do poetry, I do art, I do Twitch episodes and seasons.
Yeah, you do some great wrestling promos.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. He know I do the thing. Okay. I'm the energy.
Check him out, gang. Check him out. I am curious about the FD Signifier conversation. I have some thoughts on that, but I'll look it over and I'll see what I think. Gang, thank you for being here. There is one more thing before we end for the night. There is a community member who's going through some tough times. Joe Lewis. He was recently let go from his job. He has a GoFundMe. I'm going to post a link in the Twitch and the YouTube chat. If you feel like it, throw him $5, right? Throw him some cash. Like, we've all been in places where we've needed help. You guys have helped me, right? We can help other people too, right? So here's the links.
Real shit.
Boom. I don't know the specifics or details. He has a video on his GoFundMe where I think it explains it. You can talk to him, right? But regardless of the reason, if someone needs help, they need help, and that's always been my thing. Like, I don't care if like what happened, right? If you need something and I can give it to you, I can, I'll give it to you. Unfortunately, I'm broke too, so what I can do is give you the GoFundMe. So, but anyway, gang, thank you for coming through. What we got coming up next week, Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're gonna have a meme panel. Should men be put in cages? Right?
Yes.
Should be men kept in cages? That's a good question.
Yes.
Tuesday,
all of the men. Me too.
Yeah, to quibbles over coffee. We're going to be talking about 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙 run-ins with some of the more extreme left, and we're going to be discussing all of that. Wednesday is another Sundic show. Thursday, I might be having a very big guest on. That is in the works. Until it's solidified, I don't want to reveal it. And then Friday, we're going to go on Katie's show, where she is going to try to convert me into a progressive leftist. She has gathered a team to hold a bit of a trial for me. So we'll see how that goes. Check it out,
That's
gang.
hot content.
Yeah, for now we're gonna end out though. Where are we raiding, gang? Are you still gonna be streaming Paradigm? Are you still going for a while, or are you done?
Can't hear you, bro.
I can't. Yeah.
I was saying, sorry. I think it would be better if it went to somebody else, just because I'm going to be doing my own thing.
Counter,
I don't want to. I know how to follow an audience. You know what I mean?
Sure. Counter, are you streaming for a while after this?
Yes, I'll still be here. Yep.
Okay. Well, right into you.
All right. Sounds great. Appreciate y'all.
Nice talking to you guys.
You guys
Even you,
Monday.
Vivian.
Bye.
Fuck's sake.
give it a 5 seconds. They're not gone yet. They'll still soon be gone, though.